Hey guys. This is part 3 of What If Naruto was one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 11 Truce. Genjutsu Hozuki was currently busy reading through an extensive report which, if implemented, could completely change Kiri's shinobi forces and their doctrine, maybe even change the way the current war was going. Opposite from him in the office sat Naruto, who too was busy going over the sheer number of applications that had started pouring in. Genin, Chunin, Jounin, Anbu, Hunter ninjas, almost the entire shinobi forces wanted to join the 501st. What do you think? Asked Genjutsu curiously. It is strategically unwise to have an entire village's armed forces organized into one legion. Logistically it is impossible as well, but something has changed within our shinobi. Lord Second, previously they were divided by various groups that they served under. Anbu detested hunters, hunters detested everyone, regular ninja hated the special forces. But here they are all willing to fight under one banner. Still, I would advise not to concentrate too much power like this, explained Naruto honestly. Which is why I see merit in your proposal. If I sanction this, then Kiri's shinobi forces will be divided into 4 legions. The 501st led by you, the 212th led by Mangetsu Hozuki, the 47th Legion led by the Anbu commander, and the 99th Legion led by Yagura Karatachi. Each legion comprised of nearly 5,000 shinobi. Except for the 501st, which will only have you, the other legions will have at least 2 ninja swordsmen in their ranks. You have similarly distributed the skilled shinobi with the regular ones across legions to maintain balance. The only exceptions being the 501st, which shall have the 6-tails Jinchuriki in its ranks, while the commander of the 99th Legion Yagura is the 3-tails Jinchuriki, stated Genjutsu seriously. Naruto nodded as he got up and stepped before the ninja world map placed in the office. Genjutsu narrowed his eyes when he saw Naruto placing the 99th Legion to invade the Land of Lightning from the extreme north. The 212th would do the same from the coastal areas in the east. The 501st would link up with Konoha and Yuzu forces if an alliance was negotiated. Together they would push deeper into enemy territory through the south. The 47th Legion would be stationed in the village for its protection should the remaining 3 legions perish, but could also be used to send aid to trapped legions. Genjutsu also read through the new sets of armor and weapons for each legion. Wouldn't this reduce your own power? I made you general and you have the skills to lead men in battle. Why? Asked Genjutsu seriously, and was surprised when Naruto gave him a faint smile. Roots protect the trees. Genjutsu smiled fully as those words conveyed all that he needed to know. It truly showed the real feelings inside the heart of this shinobi. Your parents will be proud of you, praised Genjutsu honestly. I don't know about that, Lord Second. I couldn't even protect them, nor could I protect many of my friends and fellow comrades. For a nation to win any battle, the people must be united. I am expendable. My desire is to be the bridge that erases the boundaries between our people. There are greater heroes than me in this village, shinobi who are the future. I shall protect them and support them in carving a new and better future for Kirigakure, explained Naruto, as he placed another scroll before Genjutsu's desk. The Mizukage raised an eyebrow but did pick up the scroll. His eyes widened when he read the contents of another mission proposed by the officer before him. An S-rank mission. One which Naruto wanted to do alone. Naruto, you are probably the best officer I have seen in a long time. More than that, you are a good person, but you have a fatal flaw, said Genjutsu seriously, as he placed the scroll back on the table. Lord Second? Asked the confused general. Your past haunts your present. You once believed in your comrades and relied upon them, only to watch them die when facing dangerous odds. You hold yourself responsible for each of those deaths, and the guilt haunts you every day. Your past missions and even the one in Osaka is a proof of you trying to shoulder all the burden on your own. You are not all-powerful and have your limits, admonished the Mizukage, making the blonde-haired man lower his eyes. No matter how strong you are, don't try to shoulder everything or the burden will break you. More importantly, you are not alone. Naruto completely lowered his gaze, for he had no answer to that observation. No matter how much he wanted to deny it, they were true. There was a time when he had believed in his comrades only to watch them die one after another. That belief was shattered when he watched his brother die. Believe in us. He remembered those fateful words said to him by his comrades from the S program, one of them being his little brother on that fateful night. He had offered to stay behind and hold off the enemy. He would have died, but his sacrifice would have allowed his comrades to escape, including his little brother. However, they didn't leave him behind and chose to stay and fight. Now, they were all dead and he was still alive. He still remembered the devastated families of his comrades. Most of them had been so young that their deaths enraged the entire village. He still remembered those hateful glares, those accusing stares. The villagers detested him for surviving and returning back home while every shinobi under his command perished. He remembered the isolation and persecution to the point that he nearly used his own sword to end his shame. The Mizukage, however, had other plans and stopped him. Naruto. He looked up when the Mizukage called him, only to realize quite a few long moments had passed while he remembered his past. I am approving this mission. However, the 7 ninja swordsmen will complete this task as a group. That is an order, declared Genjutsu calmly, as he placed his stamp over the scroll. Very well, Lord Second, accepted Naruto with a resigned nod. Do you have the exact location coordinates for this strike? I understand that this strike may very well cripple the Land of Lightning, maybe even end this war, questioned Genjutsu, and sighed when Naruto shook his head. Not exactly, Lord Second. My comrades in the Umbu informed me that the enemy is operating in this area, but the exact location is something that the 7 of us would have to find out on our own, explained Naruto as he pointed towards quite a large operation area on the map across the Land of Lightning's borders. That's quite a large area that you need to scout. Would you like to take more forces with you? Asked the Kage. Negative. The moment we encounter this target, the most dangerous warriors from the Land of Lightning will try to stop us. They will already have a small army protecting him. A large force will get spotted easily, but a small squad can sneak in and do the task, after which it can evacuate quickly. A single shinobi would be even more easier to infiltrate, less costly to lose if discovered than an entire squad, hinted Naruto cheekily, earning a tiny smirk from the Kage. Stubborn brat. My order still stands, either all 7 of you shall go on this mission or it stands cancelled. Understood? Demanded the Mizukage, making Naruto sigh, but the boy did nod his consent. Yes, Lord Second. The objective of this mission is to make the enemy disappear without any traces pointing back to us. It would crack the Land of Lightning elites into petty factions as everybody fights to defend their power. Without backing from the elites, even the Kumogakure's military forces will be severely crippled. At that point, we will push in and crush them from the north, south and east, explained Naruto seriously. He was surprised when the Mizukage stared at him for several long seconds. I'm glad you are not our enemy. Naruto got up from his chair to offer a salute, and received a nod from the Mizukage. Wordlessly, he turned around and marched out of the office with his fist clenched shut to the point he drew blood. Tobirama sat before one of his peers in the man's office. Only this time they were devoid of any of their subordinates lingering around. It was one Kage facing another. Hokage, the war is not going well for your village. We just got news that the 11th Battalion suffered great casualties against the Wagakure and Sungakure forces. Kagami Uchiha died in battle, rendering the Uchiha clan leaderless once more, explained Genjutsu gravely. If the Hokage was troubled by this latest development, Tobirama did not show it as he remained stoic. What do you need from me? Asked Tobirama directly. Genjutsu nodded as he forwarded a well-drafted trade agreement sent to him from the daimyo of his nation. Tobirama read through the agreement before respectfully placing it back on the table. Rejected. Genjutsu's eyebrows twitched at the audacity of this man. It would seem the Senju didn't understand or was foolish enough to ignore the gravity of the situation that his village was in. Do you know what you are doing, Hokage? Asked Genjutsu with some irritation seeping into his voice. I do. My people may suffer, but they will die before they become anyone else's pawns. The will of fire is strong, and has been passed down to the next generation. Shursui Uchiha shall lead the Uchiha clan, declared Tobirama confidently. A boy of 14? For someone well known to have grudge against the Uchiha, you seem to have quite a lot of faith in them, commented the Mizukage with a frown. Shursui may be young, but he carries my brother Hashirama's will. The Uchiha may have differences with the village, but they will defend their home. As long as a single loyal Uchiha remains, that front won't collapse. You can stop trying to put fear in me, for I will never lose faith in my people, rebuked Tobirama sternly. Genjutsu didn't miss the fact that Tobirama had the same faith in his men just as Naruto had in his own. It was an admirable trait, if nothing else. Even if you threaten my life, my people will not bow. I have left behind a clear chain of command, Even if the current Hokage is swayed by sentiment and tries to endanger the future of the village for the sake of one man, he will be sacked by the elite Jounin officers and elders of the village. A few may try to risk their lives and may die by following on their sentiment to rescue me, but nothing else will happen, said Tobirama coldly. Genjutsu had known this man was stone cold, but now that he saw what Tobirama was capable of, those doubts were now a reality. If the measures were existing, then Hiruzen Sarutobi won't make any overt move to rescue Tobirama. It would earn him the ire of the Senju clan, but the village would be safeguarded. Such a cold decision could only be put in place by a man like Tobirama. Threats don't make the land of fire tremble. If you truly desire to profit, form an alliance with us. That is the only way the future of our nations will be secure, not just in peace but in war as well, proposed Tobirama. Are you proposing a military alliance? Questioned Genjutsu curiously. For a start, the land of fire remembers its friends, and we need a strong one like Kiri today. If you form an alliance with us and if we win this war, we promise not just to divide the spoils equally but establish trade, political and cultural relations with the land of water which don't exist till this day, offered Tobirama. You are asking me to form an alliance without offering anything first? Asked Genjutsu disappointedly. You mistake me, Mizukage. I am not offering you an alliance, clarified Tobirama. Then what are you offering? Questioned Genjutsu, now truly curious about this man's intention. Friendship. For once, the Mizukage didn't have an answer to an offer. He didn't know whether Tobirama was naive or playing a different game, but before Genjutsu could question the Hokage further, the door to his office received several urgent knocks. Irritated, the Mizukage gave permission, allowing a lone Umbu to step in. Lord Second, urgent news. By the time Genjutsu and Tobirama reached the training grounds, almost half of the village had gathered over the place. The two Kages soon found the reason behind the commotion when they saw the 7 ninja swordsmen fully armed with each of them facing each other. What is going on? Asked Genjutsu loudly. Just a friendly battle, Lord Second, replied Zabuza with a feral grin, making Kisame laugh. He's right. This is just for fun, agreed Kisame, earning similar smiles from Amiri and Jinpachi. Your ideas of fun usually tend to go out of hand, Kisame warned the Kage, making quite a few people around him laugh, even making Tobirama smirk. No serious harm shall be done, Lord Second. We'll make sure of that, promised Haku calmly. We all want to test our own powers and thought it would be best to see how strong we are. What better way than to have a friendly spar with shinobi of our rank? Questioned Mangetsu, earning a nod from his father. What do you say, Naruto? Tobirama keenly observed the young Namikaze had been keeping eerily quiet even as everyone voiced their opinions around him. He still remembered the fact that Tsukumo Hataki, who was one of the operatives undercover in this village from Konoha, had managed to slip in the medical report regarding this shinobi. The fact that Naruto was directly related to the Senju and Namikaze clans had only alarmed Tobirama further, for it only solidified his suspicions about this boy being his own child. Tobirama had also not missed the fact that Naruto had Uchiha blood in his veins. He remembered hearing from Inoue Namikaze that one of her paternal ancestors had been a rebel Uchiha female who had defected from her clan as she fell in love with a Namikaze. Although the Uchiha clan killed their traitorous member for her actions, she and her Namikaze husband left behind a child who would one day become Inoue's father, and whose daughter would someday give birth to the blonde man standing before Tobirama today. The Uchiha genes, while existing, were not strong in Naruto's body due to gap between generations, but it didn't change the fact that he was related to the 2 founding clans of Konoha directly, which if discovered would lead to a swift execution in Kirigakure or worse. It was why he had ordered Tsukumo to never let this secret become public, for Kirigakure would hunt down Naruto like a rabid animal and make him suffer for the treachery. He paid attention as his possible son gave a reassuring nod to the Mizukage before turning towards his peers as his eyes turned red. Try to make this fun. Amiri Ringo only had a second to blink as Naruto appeared right in front of her in a dark flash. She screamed in agonizing pain as his fist connected against her chest. Crack! Tobirama was not the only one left speechless when the red-headed female Kunoichi was sent crashing several hundred feet away before she crashed against a nearby hill and went still. A few medical ninja rushed to her side before looking at the Mizukage and shaking their head. One blow? He took her out with just one. Genjutsu felt that sensation when Naruto looked back at the remaining swordsmen who were now all united against him. In response, the Namikaze warrior unleashed his own killing intent, making several weaker ninjas and civilians drop unconscious. Mangetsu flinched when the overwhelming pressure unleashed by that killing intent fell upon him and his comrades. Everyone, he's probably an S-rank shinobi, commented Haku with gritted teeth, as she tried to fight against the overwhelming power. Even if he's a Kage-level ninja, he can't survive if all of us attack him together, advised Mangetsu. Then what are we waiting for? Demanded Zabuza, as the remaining 5 swordsmen unleashed their weapons, much to the excitement of the crowd. Tobirama narrowed his gaze when all 5 surviving swordsmen charged towards Naruto from various directions. Instead of quick counter-moves, the Kiri general stayed rooted to his spot, but his eyes watched each of his approaching opponents keenly before he clasped his hands together. Ash release, hidden explosion, water style, water barrier. All 5 swordsmen released large chunks of water from their mouths around them, creating a water barrier, and just in time as the very air around them was ignited, engulfing a small portion of the area on fire. The water barriers bore the brunt of the blast and protected their casters, but it also restricted their movement temporarily, a weakness which Naruto took advantage of as he appeared right behind Jinpachi's barrier and placed a tag on the recovering barrier. Ceiling style, the greater void. Jinpachi gasped when the limited air inside his water barrier was instantly sucked away into the seal. He made desperate attempts to escape his new prison, but the same ceiling tag kept him in place. He looked into those cold red eyes for a few long seconds before his vision started to blur. A firm hand pierced the barrier and grasped the struggling man's neck, choking what little air was left inside his body, rendering him unconscious. As the body hit the ground, Naruto turned back and saw the remaining 4 swordsmen staring at him with contempt and hidden fear in their eyes. "You still want to dance?" asked Naruto coldly, as he placed his hand upon the hilt of his sword. Tobirama was perhaps the only one in the crowd who was not shocked by the way the battle was turning out. He was not one to dismiss any opponent, but the people of Kiri and its shinobi had no idea about who they were dealing with. The Hokage could still remember the mangled corpse of the Two Tails all those years ago. This boy had been strong enough to murder a Biju when he was just 14. Now he was a man grown, a veteran of 2 wars. Only Kami knew how much power he had amassed in his mission to destroy the Land of Lightning for what they did to his family. Zabuza and Kisame both quickly performed a similar set of hand seals, unleashing their village's famous jutsu. Hidden mist jutsu. The mist started to spread quickly across the entire area and started to hamper the vision of many, including Naruto's. Undeterred, he grabbed the Tanto version of his sword and threw it in the eastern direction. Haku felt the weapon approaching through the whistling wind and dodged it with ease, but her eyes widened in horror when Naruto appeared right beside her, as he grabbed the very Tanto she dodged a moment ago. Her painful scream echoed across the area a moment later. Mangetsu hastily dispersed the mist and was angered when he saw his oldest friend had already collapsed with a non-lethal wound across her back. Naruto had made sure to not inflict permanent damage, but had not shown any mercy either by also delivering a swift blow to his opponent's head, knocking her out. Kisame, Zabuza! The remaining 3 swordsmen had murder in their eyes as they quickly performed a set of hand seals as Naruto mirrored their every sign perfectly, and with equal speed. Water style, water wall, water style, water wall. 2 monstrous waves of raging water were unleashed by the fighters, which clashed against each other with a resounding roar. Naruto had to instantly use his sword and Tanto together to block twin strikes from Zabuza and Kisame, who appeared beside him at alarming speed. His eyes narrowed when he saw Mangetsu in the air with his weapon aimed at him. "Got you now!" With both his hands and weapons engaged, he was left completely open to Mangetsu's attack, but the swordsman's triumph didn't arrive as another 9 replicas of Naruto emerged from the water that had pulled up from the previous attack. The clones attacked each swordsman in a 3-man team, which forced them to release Naruto from the deadlock in order to save themselves from getting hit. Zabuza and Kisame were easily able to dispatch their opponents with a single swing of their blades, but their eyes widened in surprise when the real Naruto disappeared from their side in a flash. Mangetsu had known something was wrong the moment the 3 clones were so easily destroyed by a single swing of his sword. He got his doubts answered when Naruto appeared behind him and forced him to defend himself. An unearthly scream was unleashed as Muramasa clashed against Kabutowari. Naruto saw Mangetsu swing his blade horizontally at him and ducked, but was soon forced to jump away when Zabuza and Kisame again appeared beside Mangetsu's side. Genjutsu didn't miss those cold red eyes glaring at the remaining 3 swordsmen for their defiance. In them, he saw anger so deep that it unnerved him a bit. His eyes widened when he felt the enormous buildup of chakra. He looked at Tobirama and was relieved to see the Hokage shared his feelings. "You don't want to dance anymore," Mangetsu warned Naruto, his voice sending chills down many people's hearts. Mangetsu had never seen a gaze as intense as the one currently burning in those red eyes. The anger and hate burning inside Naruto's heart, he could feel it growing stronger with each passing moment, ready to lash out. He saw Zabuza and Kisame were also not unaffected by the power of their opponent, but both were either brave or stupid enough to still hold their ground. When none of the three backed down, Naruto's gaze narrowed in contempt as he clasped his hands together once more. Then disappear. Tobirama and Genjetsu's eyes widened in horror when they felt all the chakra that had been infused into the very air itself. Fire and wind. This is bad, thought Tobirama worriedly, as he exchanged a nod with his counterpart Kage. They both rushed in, but it was too late. Ash release. Particle annihilation. Kirigakure was engulfed in a bright flash as powerful as the scorching sun, rendering most people blind. The few strong enough to still see witnessed an explosion identical to a mini Baijidama spreading across the entire sky. It consumed the very air itself and mercilessly set it on fire. Tobirama didn't miss the fact that the explosion was not stopping but only growing more and more larger. Naruto had set the very atmosphere on fire. Is this his version of Amaterasu? I can still feel that heat even from this distance, thought Tobirama, his respect and wariness for this shinobi increasing even more than before. Thankfully, Naruto had staged that attack several kilometers high in the sky and completely away from the village and its citizens. He had no intentions of harming anyone, but this action delivered his intentions very clear to the people of Kirigakure. Naruto panted slightly as he unclasped his hands, bringing an end to blinding explosion, much to the relief of the people around him. His cold red eyes landed upon his last three opponents, who had all gone extremely pale. Do you still want to dance? Mangetsu's hands were shaking as he tried his best to maintain his grip over his sword. He saw his comrades were not doing much better after seeing what had just happened. He could have killed us all at any moment. Was he toying with us this entire time? Thought Mangetsu bitterly. For the first time in his life, he felt outclassed completely. Stand down, he ordered in a firm and commanding tone. Neither Zabuza or Kisame had the will left to protest as they lowered their weapons, just as Mangetsu did the same. From the corner of his eyes, he saw the medical ninja had restored their remaining group members, and they too had seen a glimpse of Naruto's frightening power. They were all relieved when Naruto's red eyes transformed back into his natural blue ones, and he too placed his sword on his back. Wordlessly, he turned around and walked away, leaving behind a stunned crowd. Next day, Tobirama was not surprised when Naruto showed up at his door fully armed at midnight. Previously, the job of keeping an eye over him had been assigned to the Umbu, but it would seem the Mizukage had need of those resources, so instead he sent one man powerful enough to keep Tobirama in check should he try something unsavory. The negotiations between both Kage were still going on, and would take another week before Tobirama imagined Genjetsu would allow formal negotiations to begin with Konoha. He calmly stepped beside Naruto, who remained silent as both of them simply observed the small lake in front of them. You have become a very powerful shinobi, praised Tobirama honestly. Tobirama felt saddened when he saw Naruto remain silent, and just observed the peaceful water in front of them. If the reports were true and if this boy was truly his son, then Tobirama had failed him. He was no stranger to war and misery. Having been born in the clan wars era had made him go through enough of that. He had lost family, loved ones, friends and comrades, but never once had he been truly alone. Even when Hashirama died, he had Mito and his nieces and nephews. He had the Senju clan supporting him, and the entire village as well. This boy, on the other hand, lost everyone at a very young age. Revenge kept him going for the past 10 years, but even that was not enough to fill the hole in his heart. His actions were contradictory in nature. A part of his heart wanted to bond with the people of Kirigakure to reclaim what he lost. Even if never said it, he wanted friends, comrades. Most of all, he wanted a family. At the same time, he was a spy. It was why he had tried his best yesterday to push away the people of Kirigakure by trying to make them afraid of his power. He probably didn't have anyone left in Yuzu who cared for him, or would welcome him if he ever returned. Maybe they had forgotten he even existed. On the other hand, someday Kirigakure would discover his truth. At that point, he would belong nowhere, as Yuzu would wash their hands off him, so would Konoha. He was truly alone. Do whatever it takes to return back to your home, Night Aim. You have family waiting for you, suggested Naruto. I will. Why did you go that far during that battle? Questioned Tobirama seriously. I am about to take those men into a meat grinder of the worst kind. I wanted them to know that I was strong enough to handle anything that came our way, confessed Naruto, making Tobarama narrow his gaze. "What is this mission?" asked Tobarama hesitantly. Naruto looked at him for a long moment, judging whether it was right to reveal it or not. In the end, he sighed and looked at the dark sky as he confirmed Tobarama's worst fears. "I am going to execute the Land of Lightning's main royal family." Tobarama paled as he heard that, if fighting Kumogakure wasn't serious enough. This boy was talking about executing the most highly protected man and his entire family in the Land of Lightning. For that to happen, the 7 ninja swordsmen would have to go deep behind enemy lines and fight against one of the most fiercest warriors in the entire world. Even if they succeeded in their mission, the Land of Lightning would ensure they were all killed brutally for executing their daimyo. "It's a suicide mission," realized Tobarama out loud, earning a nod from the boy beside him. "That's my specialty, if you remember," retorted Naruto with a faint smirk. Tobarama clenched his fists. On one hand, he could see what effects this would have on the enemy if the mission was accomplished. It could possibly become the catalyst for bringing an end to this war. As a Kage, he would wholeheartedly back this move. But as this child's possible father, it's dangerous, cautioned Tobarama, hoping the boy would see reason and value his life for once. "I have nothing left to lose," countered Naruto frankly. Tobarama saw the same ruthlessness in those eyes as the one which existed in his own heart. If only he could talk to Naruto about what he had learned from Sakumo without losing what little trust they had between each other. How he wished Hashirama was here, for his elder brother would know how to break what they had discovered to this boy without making him an enemy. "I have a request," said Naruto boldly. "I'm listening," nodded Tobarama. Now he was truly curious, as Naruto had never asked him for anything before. "Should I perish, you will pull Ino Yamanaka off her assignment in Kirigakure and take her back to her home," demanded Naruto sternly, earning a cold glance from the Hokage. "She's a shinobi. Her presence here ensures that her home remains safe," refuted Tobarama, and flinched when Naruto's eyes turned red. "I don't care. She's my friend and I won't let her be used and thrown aside. If anything happens to her, then I will hold Konoha personally responsible." "You don't want to be my enemy," Naiden warned Naruto coldly. "Is that a threat?" asked Tobarama sternly, as some of his own chakra flared. "That's a promise." The tension between them increased more and more as both refused to blink and stared into each other's eyes. "I don't take threats to Konoha lightly," Naruto warned Tobarama, murder returning in his cold eyes. "Keep my last remaining friend safe, or else be prepared to relearn why the Namikaze clan was feared." Tobarama remained silent as Naruto walked away after delivering that threat. If it was anyone else, Tobarama would have a plan to deal with them if they ever threatened the village. But when it came to his own possible child, he had no answer at the moment. The Uchiha's curse of evil lingers in his heart, elder brother. "What should I do?" thought Tobarama worriedly. The more he learned about Naruto, the more he reminded Tobarama of a younger Madara. It was as if fate was playing a cruel joke on him. He who had despised the Uchiha for a long time now had his only child having that clan's blood running through his veins. He didn't know how to break this secret to Naruto, much less pull him off this mission to ensure he remains safe. Tobarama sighed. "Now I know why I never married in the first place, elder brother." Chapter 12 Conflict. Naruto looked at the assembled group of men and women before him with a keen focus upon gauging each of their reactions. Having just explained the details of their upcoming mission and the plan of action, he wanted to understand if they were mentally and physically prepared for the same. It was but natural for them to have questions, and they started pouring in just as he had expected. "What kind of strength will the enemy have?" questioned Amuri straightforwardly. "Unknown. Considering the value of the target, expect a regiment or less stationed for his protection. Many will be shinobi. I will admit, this will not be easy," clarified Naruto without hesitation. "Security will be tighter than ever considering our recent destruction of Osaka. The enemy will expect an attack, so the element of surprise is already lost. Moreover, you want us to stage this assassination in such a way that fingers are pointed at the Land of Lightning's elite noble families rather than Kirigakure. That would imply we never get detected," suggested Jinpachi. Naruto just gave a nod, earning grim looks from his fellow swordsmen. "How do we plan to infiltrate this massive operation area? There is no sea nearby and it is completely surrounded by mountains. Getting in through land will be next to impossible without detection. They will have barriers in place to sense the enemy that manages to evade patrols and checkpoints," warned Mangetsu. Naruto was satisfied to see that the future commander of the 212th Legion had a keen gaze for details. Most of all, he never underestimated the enemy or overestimated his own powers. Traits of a fine shinobi. The Land of Lightning is not as proficient in sealing techniques as Konoha or Yuzu. Our Anbu reports suggest that the maximum area covered by their barrier is within this range, informed Naruto, as he highlighted quite a large area across the map. Then how do we get in? You are pretty good at Fuinjutsu. Can you make a hole in this wall? Asked Kisame with a grin. Not enough time without the risk of detection. Barrier teams usually change their shifts on a 12-hour basis. There is one way we can get in when such a change is happening. The barrier's weakest point is in this area. Insertion from this point should allow us to sneak in undetected, explained Naruto, as he marked a clear drop on the map. A smirk came upon his hidden face when he saw everyone else blanch. Aerial jump? You do remember none of us know how to fly, unlike the Mizukage and his student, mocked Zabuza with a scowl. Naruto-san, we may be strong, but a jump from 25,000 feet? Asked Haku in a trembling voice. The blonde officer had to fight hard to hide his disappointment. These warriors were considered the best in Kiri. He found their lack of faith in their own powers disturbing. Maybe it had to do with the fact that in their village's history such a mission had never been attempted, while he had already led a similar mission deep behind enemy lines some years ago. Although he hoped the outcome didn't turn out to be the same as the last time, at least for the sake of these swordsmen. I will make sure each of you lands safely after this jump. That's a promise. He was not surprised when his declaration was met with silence until Mangetsu looked at him with annoying gaze. You have done something like this before, haven't you? Naruto fought back a flinch at that sharp observation. While most people couldn't know about his history in the Anbu Black Ops of Kiri, this boy, being the Mizukage's son, could access his mission records if he called in a favor. He had conducted such a mission in the past as an Yuzu shinobi. Denying that he had never done this before would crush what little trust these people may have in his abilities. However, accepting the same would only invite more questions and probing. We'll just have to believe in you, I guess. Everyone, I will not lie and say this is going to be easy. It's a suicide mission, but one which would determine the future of our village and people. The Mizukage entrusted us with this future. We cannot fail, declared Mangetsu in a firm voice. The blonde Namikaze couldn't help but feel that perhaps Mangetsu had purposefully not pushed him and diverted the group's attention. Why did he do it was the real question. Naruto narrowed his eyes when he saw the change those words had on the others. Even if they didn't say anything, their postures became a little more firm and confident. Do you really think we can do this? Asked Haku hesitantly, with the same question present in the eyes of most of the others as well. Mangetsu had his own doubts, but there was something about Naruto that made him want to believe in his plan and his abilities. It was probably the way in which he carried himself which clearly showed that he knew what he was doing. The fact that he had already shown that he cared deeply about the lives of his men was enough to make him believe in this man once more. If it's any consolation, I had requested to be sent alone, but the Mizukage believed the 7 of us were needed to work together, said Naruto apologetically, much to everyone's surprise. Why would you ask for something so suicidal? Asked Haku worriedly. Self-sacrifice. To protect one's home from the shadows selflessly is what being a shinobi is to me. I wanted to do this on my own in order to avoid other lives being put in jeopardy. But, said Naruto hesitantly, a part of his heart unable to help but feel guilty for getting them involved in this risky operation. Naruto, believe in us. His eyes widened when he heard Mangetsu say those words, and the same feeling were present in the eyes of the others as well. A look of grim determination. He had seen that look before. For just a tiny moment, he saw the shadows of his dead friends sitting before him, just like these swordsmen were sitting before him now. Believe in us. Nagato had been the one to say those words all those years ago, and the same feeling had been present in the eyes of all his friends from the S program. He had made a choice back then. A choice that got everyone killed. Mangetsu had seen the fleeting look of guilt that had plagued Naruto when he asked the man to believe in them. However, it was soon overtaken by a stoic gaze as the blond man suppressed his inner emotions. We leave in 2 days. Get your gear ready. Naruto walked alone in the cemetery of the fallen shinobi of Kirigakure. He didn't stop until he reached the memorial stone and simply stared at it. The names were different here, but he remembered Yuza having a similar stone where the names of his fallen comrades and family were mentioned. The name of his little brother. He gingerly touched the stone and felt the conflict in his heart fade away as a sense of calmness washed over him. For the past few days, he had been fighting himself desperately. He had perhaps been fighting this feeling for an entire decade, but now he knew his heart was cracking. There was a time when he closed his eyes, all he could see were the faces of his dead comrades and family. But now, he could sleep if only a little. He could rest at nights without the threat of nightmares plaguing him, as having Ino there with him gave him some much-needed peace. She was the only friend he had made in a long time, someone who understood him. Someone who accepted him despite his faults and sins. A small blush came upon his cheeks as he realized something which he hadn't before. He liked to be around Ino, he enjoyed her company and her cheerfulness, which was enough to cast away his own grim attitude. He knew that he was not an easy person to be around, but she never gave up on him and even had the guts to bash him if he sulked too much. Even if she didn't realize it, she was already sealing away the hole in his heart little by little. Maybe a part of him loved her. Then there were the shinobi of Kage. The way they looked up to him, believed in him, made him feel like the old days had returned once more. Maybe he could once again be someone people could depend upon, instead of being the scapegoat of all failures of the past. The 7 ninja swordsmen were just like his comrades from the S program in some ways. They were strong and smart, all of them were different from each other, but when he fought by their side, he felt a camaraderie he hadn't experienced in years. The way Genjutsu had faith in him reminded him of the way Yahiko had looked at him. In a way, the Mizukage reminded him of the father he had lost. These bonds were precious to him, even if he was a spy and sworn to defend another village. A part of his heart cared about these people and Kage. And it scared him. "Nagato, you all had faith in me and I failed," he whispered, hoping his departed brother's soul could hear him. "For a long time, I carried this burden in guilt. It was too heavy," he confessed. His gaze bore into the stone fiercely, hoping that the dead could truly see his feelings for them as he made a new choice. "Father, mother, everyone, I shall always protect Yuzu until the day I die. And I'll never forget any of you," he promised sincerely, as a lone tear fell from his eyes. He closed his eyes as he made his decision. For once, there was no pain or guilt left in his gaze when he opened his eyes again. "But I think I want to move forward with some new comrades," he gasped when he saw the ghosts of his family standing in front of him, but instead of the angry glares from his nightmares, they were smiling. Minato nodded. Yahiko, his father. "My son," whispered Inoue, his mother, with a kind smile. Nisan greeted Nagato with a thumbs up and a cheeky smile. In this moment, he truly realized what Ino had been trying to teach him for so long. It was not the dead that haunted him, but his own guilt that stopped him from moving forward. He looked back at Kage, and despite all he had went through, it brought a warm feeling in his heart. He was home. 3 gentle hands were placed at his back as they nudged him forward even as his family started to disappear, but that gesture alone washed away the last of his pain. He looked back at Kage with a newfound determination and hope that he had forgotten for a long time. "I shall believe in them," he decided. He stood tall and firm as he looked back at his family with a newfound determination. "Father, mother, Nagato, I will never give up. I'll believe in my new comrades and never let them die," he promised with a smile. The ghosts vanished, however something within him was filled again. Tobirama had not been able to stop himself from thinking about the upcoming mission that Kage was about to launch. It was not that he cared about the shinobi taking part, or the outcome it would have for the mist, but for the fact that his only possible son was leading it. For all his faults, Tobirama could not deny that he found Naruto to be a good leader. Still, the risks that child took. "Tobirama-sama, you'll make a hole in the floor with all that pacing," chided Tsukumo gently with a smile. He paused and stared at another one of his prized subordinates, who had been assigned to keep an eye on him in his current home. If only the Mist knew how many spies they had amidst their ranks, they would probably execute him on the spot. That brought a thin smile to his lips. "Tsukumo, do you think Naruto can pull this off?" asked the Hokage honestly. He had needed a second opinion, one that was unbiased, and he could think of no other than the White Fang who was fit for the task, so he had told the man about Naruto's mission. He saw Tsukumo smile at him without hesitation. "He will." Tobirama blinked, and was unable to hide his surprise at the swift and confident reply. Tsukumo must have gauged his reaction as a darker and grim-faced look appeared on his own face. "Do you remember the Battle of Ayajika?" asked Tsukumo. "It's where you earned the name White Fang. Your bravery that day saved the lives of our shinobi. Although that victory costed us a lot of men," recited Tobirama, but narrowed his gaze when he saw Tsukumo look away. "I did what I could to survive and make others do the same. But there was another shinobi besides me that day who played a major role in that victory. The first great ninja war, Konoha and Yuza had sent a force of 2,000 shinobi to stop an invasion from Kumo forces. The enemy had nearly 3 times our numbers. It was essentially a suicide mission. We were supposed to hold off the enemy force and perish, allowing time for the majority of our forces to be mobilized. The enemy had launched the war so suddenly and blindsided us, explained Tsukumo hesitantly. It was a difficult decision, one which the Mizukage had agreed with. Fortunately, we won that day, said Tobarama calmly, without a sign of any guilt or remorse. Tsukumo did not miss the harsh nature of this man. It was a stark difference to his own son's feelings towards his men. Tobarama would sacrifice 1,000 shinobi without hesitation or remorse if it meant that would protect Konoha, but Naruto on the other hand would try to save his men even if it meant taking great risks. Tobarama was logical and methodical in each and every decision, whether it be politics or the battlefield. What you didn't know was that Naruto was present in that battle. It was his plan that carried us to victory, confessed Tsukumo. What? I thought Danzo had led our forces properly. I had given him command of the force, said Tobarama sharply, as his gaze narrowed. He did not miss the way in which Tsukumo's gaze hardened as Danzo's name was mentioned. I would be dead if that brat had led the battle entirely. So would our entire force. He wanted us to confront the enemy in open battle. He was callous and eager for glory. He specifically placed the Uchiha and Uzumaki shinobi in the vanguard and was leading the entire force into a trap where the enemy would surround us, followed by destroying us to the last man, said Tsukumo bitterly. Tobarama grit his teeth as he heard the hidden truth. He knew a man like Tsukumo would not lie about something like this. The fact that he had kept silent about this would suggest he had valid reasons. He allowed the man to continue. The men were so close to a revolt, especially the Uchiha, who thought that this was your way of getting rid of them. The Uzumaki were of the same belief. Danzo's attitude only made matters worse as he questioned the loyalty of the Uchiha to the village and the Uzumaki's commitment to our alliance. The only reason the Uchiha didn't mutiny was because of Kage and his loyalty to the village. The Uzumaki were kept in check by their leader, a shinobi from the S program, revealed Tsukumo. The second Hokage had to take a seat as these revelations were brought to his notice. It was no wonder the Uchiha became so edgy after the battle. He had always imagined it was their way of thinking, but to think his own student had pushed the Uchiha and Uzumaki to this limit. Naidame, it is true that Madara betrayed the village, but the Uchiha didn't. They stayed loyal and Madara paid for his treachery with death. You have needlessly ostracized the Uchiha by creating the police force. If not for this war, your plan would have restricted the Uchiha to stay in the village and take less and less part in missions. Your students have inherited your will and your fears. Someday it may lead our village to great darkness, warned Tsukumo. Tobarama clenched his fist to the point that he drew blood. Fortunately for us, Naruto had been present and took command when Danzo was injured. He led the men to victory through his tactical decisions with minimal losses. Even though we couldn't destroy the enemy completely, we were able to stop their invasion and inflict heavy casualties, confessed Tsukumo. Why did you keep this secret from me? Asked Tobarama coldly. It was Naruto's wish. Tobarama was again stunned by this revelation but allowed the man to continue. Naruto had seen the discord among our force. Danzo was commanding from the rear instead of leading the men. The enemy's aerial bomber squadron found the command location and hit them. I was out in the front lines where the enemy was decimating us when I got injured. The medical ninja took me back to the command center where I found not Danzo but an Uzumaki shinobi directing the troops in secret. He did not let the troops know that command was hit, and most of the officers were dead. Instead, he made them retreat from the open terrain to the forest of Ayajika. His actions saved our force from total massacre. He then used the haunted forest to lure the enemy into his trap. Before the battle even began, he had surveyed the entire terrain, including the forest. He had this plan ready and used the caves across the forest to launch kamikaze attacks one after another. He isolated the large enemy force into splinter groups and took them out one by one within a week using the haunted forest as his shield. During the entire time, he kept up the impression that Danzo and the leadership were still in command and had not abandoned the men, which kept them going. Finally, the enemy couldn't afford more casualties and retreated. Tsukumo's confession had opened up a whole lot of problems for the worried Hokage. If this was true, why was Danzo hailed as a hero? Why did you officers not report this to me? Asked Tobarama, some anger seeping into his voice. It was a time of war, Naidame. That victory bolstered the confidence of our troops and made them develop trust in each other. If they realized the truth, Naruto made us officers swear on our honor to keep his actions a secret and let Danzo take the credit for the victory. Most of the officers were afraid you would reprimand them for reporting against one of your prized students. They were wary of you, Tobirama-sama, said Tsukumo seriously. I cannot imagine Naruto to be much older than 11 or 12 when that battle took place, said Tobirama hesitantly. A true ninja protects from the shadows, he said. That victory united various clans within the village. It even strengthened our alliance with Yuzu. It brought our shinobi closer. Naruto understood that better than anyone. Even at that tender age, he thought like a Hokage. We entrusted everything to him, and he carried out his duties perfectly without expecting anything in return. He's a fine shinobi, Lord Second. Have faith in him, insisted Tsukumo sincerely. Tobirama didn't say anything in response even as Tsukumo left to get them some tea. It was true that he had always been wary of the Uchiha because of his past. Maybe a part of him detested them for killing his brothers. Unlike Hashirama, he couldn't let go of the past so easily. His eyes widened. It was the exact same way Naruto thought. Just as Tobirama's feelings for the Uchiha, Naruto detested Kumogakure for killing his brother. All this time he had never been able to accept Naruto truly. Whenever Tobirama looked at him, all he could see were those eyes and the blood of the clan that Tobirama detested. A clan that killed his brothers, his parents, his friends, his comrades. He tolerated the Uchiha to respect Hashirama's wish, but never had he trusted them. Maybe he was passing on those feelings towards Naruto as well. He had been so wary of the boy and his hatred that he failed to see the good in him. Maybe a part of Naruto's heart was consumed by hatred for the brother he lost. But unlike Madara, who chose to betray his home in his pain, this boy was still protecting it from the shadows. He was a true shinobi. Maybe I was wrong, elder brother. Naruto stared at the sword in his hand quite attentively. He closed his eyes and allowed his senses to stop being active, allowing himself to feel the energy around him. It took a few moments, but soon enough he could feel the familiar chakra of people and animals near the training ground he was currently standing in. If he focused hard enough, he could also feel the energy fluctuating within the very nature itself. He had not forgotten the way in which his prized sword had greedily consumed his energy during the Battle of Osaka. In that moment, his rage had made him incapable of sensing the drain, but after the battle he had felt more fatigued than usual. The fact that he had vomited blood was a serious issue, and one which he had kept hidden from everyone including Ino, for this was something he had to figure out himself first. Even now, he had to fight off that minor attempt by the weapon to latch on to his chakra network. It was acting like a parasite desperate to bond with its host, possibly even take over control with the passage of time. A power like this couldn't have been created without some sort of foul ritual. It was too unnatural to be created without that. There was only one way to measure the extent of the danger this weapon posed to him. Wordlessly, he created a clone of himself who nodded back at him, promising aid if things went out of control. Naruto allowed the last of his control to fade and let himself to be fully revealed to Muramasa. He was not surprised when the images of his deceased family flashed before his eyes. He watched them laugh with him. In this vision he seemed to be a jounin, and even his little brother was still alive, with both of them having become fine shinobi of Yuzu. He had known this would not be easy, and his strength was truly tested when their deaths played before his eyes one after another. He saw his father jumping over that explosive to save his comrades. He saw his mother stepping in between the sword aimed at him. He saw his little brother getting butchered in a shower of rocks. Then came his friends, his bonds and emotions that developed with them, followed by their gruesome deaths. When he didn't break despite the painful visions, they shifted directly towards Kirigakure. Muramasa must have felt the slight flicker in his heart as it bombarded him with flashing images of all those whom he held dear, all those whom he respected, and those he wanted to protect one after another. His eyes widened when he saw Kirigakure burn. Nearly half of the village was in flames, with entire streets littering with dead bodies. It was as if an invasion had been staged that wiped out a large chunk of the population. Anger surged through him when he saw a man dressed in dark robes slaughter two jounin that got in his way. This man's face was covered by a rippled mask that was blood red in color. It was he who was leading an army of shinobi in unknown armor and crest marks on their backs within the village. Naruto charged after them. It took some effort to make himself invisible to the enemy, and by the time he reached their location, he saw that they had entered the district where the Kage clan resided. His eyes widened when he saw dozens upon dozens of white-haired men and women lying dead in the streets, in the houses. There were so many dead everywhere. He had never truly cared about the Kagayas, but this was terrible. The way the wounds were inflicted on the dead clansmen clearly showed they were made to suffer horribly before death gave them mercy. This was an intentional act, one meant to hurt. Even if the Kagayas were selfish and bastards to an extent, to slaughter people like cattle. He grit his teeth when he saw that same masked man entering what looked like to be the hall where the clan usually gathered for meetings or celebrations. His shinobi army was right behind him as they marched dutifully. A handful Kagaya guards tried to stop them but were easily cut down by that masked man. He ran after them. He clenched his fists when he entered the hall and found each and every Kagaya clansman dead everywhere. It was a massacre. He heard fighting on the upper levels and charged ahead. His confidence was bolstered when the enemy didn't notice him even when he stood right beside them. While they looked human, their uniforms and armor were unlike anything he had ever seen before. Were they warriors of a new nation or one which was destroyed in the past? What the hell was Muramasa showing him? Steeling himself, he rushed into the only room that was left to be breached. The masked man tore it apart with a single clench of his right fist, exposing nearly 24 Kagaya children cowering behind tables and closets. Their terror turned to relief when they saw the masked man, but that feeling soon vanished when a sword appeared in that man's hand. Naruto had been through 2 wars and seen some of the most brutal actions humans could commit, but nothing could prepare him for the way in which the masked man walked into the room and slashed a 5-year-old boy's neck. Bile rose in his throat when another little girl was sliced in half by that monster, even as the soldiers under his command watched with cold eyes devoid of any emotion or mercy. The children panicked and screamed in terror. Many begged him for mercy, many just started to cry hysterically as they were too young to bear the brutality happening in front of them. Naruto tried to move but found himself rooted to his spot by an invisible force. He couldn't close his eyes anymore to block the inhuman massacre happening in front of him. Each second another child was struck down by the masked man, with their pleas for mercy having no effect on his heart. Even from the distance, Naruto could feel the hatred and anger in the shinobi. He was in deep agony, but that didn't stop him from killing each and every one of the Kagaya children. Naruto collapsed to his knees when the final child was killed. Part of him was horrified by what he had just seen, another was relieved that it was over. Lord Flash. He blinked and opened his eyes when he heard a whisper so sinister that it rattled his heart. Lord Flash. Naruto froze when that voice spoke again, and this time the masked man turned around to directly stare at him. Their eyes met, and it was in that moment when Naruto saw a pair of lifeless and cold red eyes burning through his very soul. His eyes. The man in front of him removed his mask only to reveal Naruto's own face staring back at him. Those red eyes had lost all innocence and mercy. That hardened face showed a man who had been through hell. That broken gaze showed he had lost all faith. Fulfill your destiny, Lord Flash. Hatred surged through him at that voice even as it said those heinous words. Instead of making him stronger, it started to weaken him, making him realize just what exactly the sword was trying to do. He looked at this version of him and knew this was not who he was or who he wanted to be. He had done several messed up things in the past as part of his mission or for his revenge, but it had only brought him more pain and suffering. He was not a hero like his father or little brother, but he also didn't want to be a monster. He was Naruto Namikaze of Kirigakure and he was Minato Namikaze of Uzushiogakure. The vision started to disappear as his will overpowered that of the sword. It protested viciously, trying to show him other images, but Naruto's firm belief in himself made all those attempts futile. When he opened his eyes fully, he saw his clone had disappeared due to the severe distress the original went through. His gaze landed upon the sword and was surprised to see it was burning up. But instead of a red aura that radiated hatred and anger, it was a blue-colored aura that reflected the peace which the sword master had made with himself. Naruto also didn't feel the sword trying to consume his life force. Instead, it was trying to aid him as much as possible by sharing the chakra it had stored with him. He nodded to himself as he understood something about his weapon, for it would work the way he wanted it to. He just had to be strong enough to always make it clear who was the master. The rays of the sun were slowly receding away from the village, allowing its famous mist to return once again. Human activity started to slow down, if only a little, as Naruto strolled towards his home. He had taken the liberty to travel across rooftops, for the people would never let him go if he walked among them. It would seem most of the village was enamored by their new general, and wanted to see what he was really like in ordinary life. For them, he was a mystery. Dismissing those thoughts, he increased his speed but stopped when he saw a familiar face sitting in the training ground near his home. He narrowed his eyes when he saw 4 hunter ninjas surrounding the shinobi. Grabbing a kunai from his pouch, he threw it straight forward in the direction of the training ground. Mei had been in the midst of a heated argument with 4 hunter ninjas when they were all stopped by a bright yellow flash happened in front of them. When their vision finally cleared, Mei was surprised to see a familiar blonde-haired man with a stark white haori standing in front of her. "Lord Seventh," she whispered. He was holding that kunai which she had barely seen flying towards them before that flash had happened. Apparently, the hunters knew this man too. "Scatter," ordered one of the hunters. Wordlessly, all of the hunters deserted the area in the blink of an eye, drawing a smirk from the tall man currently standing in front of Mei. "Bullies are really annoying, aren't they?" he asked with a smile, as he offered her his hand. "You shouldn't have intervened." "I was about to handle them," she answered honestly, but didn't refuse his hand as he pulled her to her feet. "Sorry, I thought." "Never mind," he apologized sheepishly, as he scratched the back of his head. Mei couldn't help but notice that the real Naruto was quite clumsy and sheepish. There was no doubt he was extremely powerful, he had proved that too many times, but just standing beside him gave her a sense of peace she had only experienced with her family. Maybe it was because he accepted her even though she was a Jinchuriki. "People might start hating you, if you are seen to be taking my side or even being around me, Lord Seventh," she cautioned him, if only for his well-being. "Then that's their problem," he answered flatly, making her blink in surprise at his honesty. "We only live once, so it's better to live on our terms as much as we can." She couldn't help but smile at that simple but true philosophy. "You were trying to meditate in order to better control your powers, weren't you?" he asked sharply. She had to again remind herself that behind that easygoing man was a fine shinobi. One that she respected and admired. "Yes," she admitted, "it's scary when we have to battle our own self. It's one of the toughest battles one can ever fight," he whispered, and from the way he said it portrayed he had been through something like that. "Lord Seventh, please call me Naruto when we are not on mission. It's embarrassing enough as it is," he requested with a smile, making her smile as well. "Well then, Naruto. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to stay in the 501st. I got the conscription letter today," said Mei with large smile, but he just shrugged. "You're a fine shinobi, Mei. I need people like you if we are to win this war," admitted Naruto honestly. "Still, I wanted you to know that I am grateful for your faith in me, which is why I want to make myself stronger. I couldn't help you much during the last battle, but this time," she whispered hopefully, and was satisfied when he nodded respectfully at her resolve. He seemed to hesitate for a few moments before he made up his mind and looked at her. "I'm going on a mission soon," he said, as he rummaged through his pockets only to produce a sealing tag before her. Somehow, Mei had a feeling that this was not an ordinary mission, judging from the grim expression in the man's eyes. Her doubts were proven true when he offered her that sealing tag. "I may not return." It was a reality every shinobi had to live with, including Mei herself. Still, the thought of losing the man standing before her did not sit well, even troubled her heart to some extent. "Focus upon your meditation and place this seal upon your body. If the beast tries to take control, this will stop it," promised Naruto sincerely. "Why do you go so far for me, Lord Seventh?" asked Mei in a whisper, as she respectfully accepted the seal. He smiled as he looked into her eyes. "You know why." Her eyes became moist as she realized he understood and respected her devotion to the village. He was not afraid of her or the beast within her. Besides from her father, he was the only one who had faith in her. "Your path may not have been easy, but you have a strength most people don't possess. Someday the people of this village will truly come to recognize and respect the shinobi that you are. Most importantly, you are not alone," Mei said Naruto sincerely with a smile. He gave her a parting nod even as a lone tear slipped from her eyes. "Thank you," Naruto said Mei happily, even as a small blush crept up on her cheeks. "The future must stay bright. I leave the village to you, Mei." He was gone even as he whispered those words to her. Watching him go away ignited a tiny spark of worry inside of Mei. Just what was this mission that he was going on? She didn't know much, but this man was the only one aside from her family who treated her like a human being, who respected her as a shinobi and had faith in her. It would break her heart if something were to happen to him. She flinched when she closed her eyes for a second only to see the same man being buried in a coffin. No, she couldn't let that happen. "You are the future of this village, Lord Seventh. We cannot lose you," she thought with determination, She clenched her fist and looked in the direction of the Mizukage's office, knowing what she had to do to keep that future safe. Chapter 13, Last Light. Naruto stood alone in his bedroom as he examined the gear currently displayed across his bed. 4 different scrolls containing kunai and shuriken, even the exploding ones. Beside that rested a medkit, a sturdy pair of ropes, and another scroll containing sealing tags along with his custom-made gear. A standard blue shirt over which he would wear a common gray-colored flak jacket which was prevalent among Kumo shinobi, and dark black pants. Unlike the past where he preferred combat boots, this time he was wearing combat edition sandals, as only the Kinkaku were allowed combat boots in Kumogakure. Another change was the fact that he was not going to carry Muramasa with him in this mission. Just like every other swordsman will be leaving their infamous swords behind and only carry standard weapons. It would reduce their power nearly by half, but the main objective of this mission was to break the Land of Lightning's unity. That would never happen if Kirigakure was found to be behind the assassination of the daimyo and his family. It was why he was carrying his sword from his Umbu days. It was a sharp weapon and extremely light in nature. The fact that it could channel chakra was an added bonus. At the end of this gear was also a will he had written should something happen to him. It was a possibility every shinobi had to prepare for, and he was no exception. After all these years, it was second nature to him. Previously, he had willed to have his assets and wealth be distributed to the orphaned children of Yuzu. While that mandate still existed, he had also added another part of his will that made Ino his beneficiary for all the wealth he had earned in Kirigakure. Suffice it to say, considering his vast Umbu career and current enlistment as one of the 7 ninja swordsmen, would not leave her wanting for money. Satisfied that he had everything in place for tomorrow's mission, he quickly placed the entire set in his wardrobe carefully, to be taken out tomorrow night when he embarked on the mission. Just as he finished, he heard a soft knock on the door, and saw his wife standing there patiently with a resigned expression on her face. "It's tomorrow, isn't it?" she asked knowingly. "Yes." He narrowed his eyes in curiosity when she nodded and then went out for a moment only to come back with a soft wooden box in her hands. He walked towards her and didn't miss the apprehension on her face. "Open it," she requested, earning a nod from him. He gingerly lifted the lid and blinked in surprise when he saw what she had got for him. He looked at her and saw her fears clearly. His hand picked up one of the custom-made kunai that was neatly placed in the box. Unlike other normal kunai, this one was completely different. For starters, there were 3 sharply edged blades instead of one possessed by normal kunai. While it was a little heavier, its handle was made of fine leather that made it easy to hold. He also didn't miss that it had tiny slot over which any seal could be placed to make it an explosive weapon. This weapon would prove extremely helpful in melee battles and long-range fights as well. Plus, there was another idea that was forming in his mind for which he could use these kunai. A weapon like this could only be crafted by the chief blacksmith of this village, one who had made his prized sword. And his services were extremely expensive, even most jounin couldn't afford to buy his weapons. Ino had brought 24 of such kunai for him if that other box of similar design resting on their dining table was any indication apart from the one in his hand. He lowered his gaze as the gift he had for her paled in comparison to what she had given him. "Is it not good? I'll bring something better if," said Ino worriedly. He immediately looked up in alarm as she was about to take his silence in the wrong way. Their gaze met, and he said 2 words that destroyed all her fears. "It's perfect." Ino felt a great weight had been lifted off her chest. Watching him smile at her warmed her heart. Getting these kunai had not been an easy task. For starters, the blacksmith had refused her quite a few times when she went to give the order. Only when she revealed her full name did the blacksmith immediately accept her offer, although it didn't change his exorbitant rates. Still, she had enjoyed that old fool's reaction when she introduced herself as Ino Namikaze. That memory made her blush as it was the first time she had truly acknowledged being his partner from her heart instead as a part of her mission. Something had changed inside of Naruto, she could see it even if he never said anything. He had always been considerate about her, but since past few days he made sure to assist her wherever he could. Though, cooking was something she made him stay away from if both of them wanted to live. He also took her out for outings and dinners, even when she insisted that he didn't have to. The fact that he took her to her most favorite places in the village showed her that something between them had changed. "I also wanted to give you something," he said quietly, bringing her out of her own thoughts. "You don't have to," she replied quickly, for she had not given him this gift and expected one in return. "I'm really grateful to you for all that you have done for me." It might not seem much in your eyes, but it is for me. Although I doubt my gift will be as good as yours, he added sheepishly. He respectfully kept the kunai box on a nearby table but did hang on to the kunai in his hand quite possessively, which made her smirk. That smirk vanished when he opened one of his smaller drawers and produced a fine diamond necklace. Ino gasped as he approached back towards her, his own fears easy for her to see. However, her gaze was fixed upon the Namikaze clan marking on that necklace. It belonged to my mother. I want you to have it, he said with a smile. Naruto, I can't, this is a part of your family. And I am not one. Her eyes widened as she finally understood his feelings. She looked in his serene blue eyes and found nothing but endless love and affection for her. It brought tears in her eyes which made him panic instantly. He sheepishly babbled and apologized before she silenced him with a fierce kiss across his lips. He stood still for a moment before giving in as he wrapped his arms around her and returned her gesture. When they finally broke apart, she looked deep into his eyes to make sure he knew what he was doing. Naruto didn't flinch and understood her question even if she never asked him in words. He knew despite the gift which made things pretty clear about his feelings for her, he had to confess. This was not the way he wanted this to happen, but he couldn't go back now. You're very important to me, Ino. I remember the day we met. I nearly told you to mind your own business, he said apologetically, making her roll her eyes at him. You were an ass back then. Still are to some extent, she teased him, and was hoping he would retort back. Instead, he just smiled at her, which sent a tingling sensation in her heart. Still, you're a stubborn woman. You made sure to keep me focused and functional. You took up responsibilities for the both of us without expecting anything in return. You comforted me during my nightmares, even when I disrespected you, he remembered shamefully. It had been the earlier days of their partnership where he was wary of her. She had tried to comfort him during his nightmares only to receive warnings to stay away and even nearly coming to blows. Things were different back then. You have been through a lot, Naruto, she reassured him, but he shook his head. My crimes are mine. What I am trying to say is that you never gave up on me, supported me and cared for me despite not knowing me. You allowed me to make peace with my past, make peace with myself. Because of you I have hope for a future that I have never seen, and I want you to be a part of that future, he confessed. Naruto, what are you? She asked, her throat feeling dry as he looked at her with a smile and blush covering his cheeks. I love you. He didn't look away even when her eyes widened and her lips trembled. A part of him was scared for going so far, knowing how dangerous their jobs were. A part of him was scared of losing her. One more time. He repeated that mantra over and over again in his heart, for he wanted to believe in the future, wanted to believe in her, for she was worth it. She lowered her gaze and he tensed when a few tears fell on the floor, but then she wrapped her arms around him to pull him into a warm embrace. You took so long, Baka. His hands trembled as he melted into that warm embrace, but deep down a hole in his heart was filled. Ino groggily opened her eyes when she felt the warmth beside her had gone missing. She flinched when she felt the evening rays of the sun penetrating through their room's window. She had never felt so tired and so fulfilled at the same time. The memories of their actions last night made her blush. The fact that she had slept for most of the day showed how tired she was. Her gaze fell upon her partner, who had finished dressing up for his mission, which would begin tonight. She watched him move around, making sure to not her presence be felt. He grabbed most of his gear before looking at himself in the mirror. Her breath stopped when he activated those red eyes that resembled the Sharingan so much. He quickly practiced a strange set of hand seals at speeds which was impossible for her to follow. What happened next clearly baffled her. So this is how you are going to make sure that airdrop succeeds? She whispered in awe. He blinked in surprise before looking at her, and had to control his urges firmly when he saw her naked body, and the memories of last night came rushing back. She smirked on seeing his reaction before walking towards him without any shame. This jutsu belonged to my little brother, he confessed somberly. Nagato? She asked, remembering one of their recent conversations when he had revealed the names of his deceased family. The sadness in his eyes at the mentioning of his brother was enough for her to understand that perhaps Naruto loved his little brother more than anyone. That feeling was quickly replaced by hatred as he clenched his fists. He was a better shinobi than me. I can barely even master a small portion of this jutsu, but he could do so much more. He could have been so much more, whispered Naruto bitterly. Naruto. Finally, after so many years, I will get the chance to avenge my little brother by killing the man whose ambitions led to his death, promised Naruto remorselessly. Revenge won't give you peace, Naruto, she warned him, and saw him stare at her with mild disappointment in his red eyes. So this is the Senju's will of fire? Hashirama, even dead you still haunt this world with your mistakes, spat Naruto furiously. What? Asked Ino in surprise. She had never imagined Naruto carried so much bitterness towards the first Hokage. Even dead, he still lives on through you and all those who carry his will. But he was wrong, said Naruto fiercely. He kissed her before departing a few moments later. However, their conversation haunted her, as it only solidified what Tobirama had said to her a few days back when she had been placed on guard duty. She watched Naruto walk away from their balcony as Tobirama's words terrified her. The Namikaze clan is extinct because of Kumogakure. His parents and sibling are dead because of the ambition of the Land of Lightning. His comrades were butchered by the very same nation. Naruto carries all the hatred of the Namikaze clan, of his family, of his brother, of his comrades, and will strike the Land of Lightning with that curse. For that is his ninja way. When Naruto reached the operation area, he was not pleased. The reason for that was plain and simple. His original plan involved 7 highly skilled operatives taking part in this mission, but now there were 7 in the area apart from him. His cold blue eyes narrowed at the unexpected addition of Mei Terumi. Even if she and the others had their faces covered by Kumogakurumbu masks, he could easily identify each and every member of his squad. They must have also sensed his ire, as Mangetsu immediately stepped forward and handed him a sealed scroll that had the Mizukage stamp on it. Sending one scathing glare at Mei, who flinched, he opened the scroll and clenched his fist as he read the order. Your backup plan. Those 3 words alone had sent his plan for a toss, much less jeopardized the entire mission. I have filled her in on the plan as per the Mizukage's orders, informed Mangetsu curtly, and didn't flinch when Naruto glared at him furiously. This is a mistake, cursed Naruto. Mei was extremely heartbroken on hearing those words but did not back away even as Naruto marched towards her. She remained tall and strong even as he mercilessly strapped that old seal back on her shoulder. I don't know how you played on the Mizukage's fears, but know this, that you have crossed a line with me. Your presence here puts our entire operation at risk, scolded Naruto, even as he activated the seal that would keep her from activating her beastly powers without his explicit consent. The village cannot afford to lose 7 of its best warriors for one mission. I am here to ensure all of you return back alive, Naruto answered Mei curtly. That's commander for you, and you will not use your powers unless I say so. You will not disobey me or I will kill you. Mei gulped when those merciless red eyes activated again in the commander's gaze, which clearly showed how serious he was about the threat he had just made. She might come in handy if we are deep shit, countered Amuri. A Jinchuriki is an open target, and one which can be easily identified. Kumogakure will already have her marked and known to each of its shinobi, argued Jinpachi furiously. But the same could be said for us, argued Haku. Enough. The bantering instantly stopped when that command was issued by Naruto, who was looking at the night sky. We improvise. That's how the Black Ops function. He received grim nods in return as everyone fell into line, which finally made Naruto send a nod towards Mangetsu, who started performing a familiar set of hand seals. Summoning jutsu. The Hozuki clan ninja summoned forth a large eagle that stared back at the shinobi with a curious gaze. Mangetsu quickly hopped on top of it and took up what could be called the pilot seat. Use chakra to keep yourselves seated and make no unnecessary movements, or you will fall to your deaths, instructed Naruto crisply. He watched as the squad took up positions over the large bird, and when his red eyes confirmed that each of them had grappled themselves with the summon through chakra, he nodded in satisfaction. Cover your eyes, for the skies will be violent tonight. As planned, the squad instantly donned their combat glasses, including Mei. The fact that she had the same gear as everyone else was a small relief for Naruto, as he had feared she had been sent in unprepared. Our hearing will be limited up there, and during the jump, so we must rely on hand signs. Repeat them all once more, he commanded. He was pleased to note that everyone perfectly mimicked the hand signs for various short messages. The fact that Mei did not falter showed that Mangetsu had been thorough in her briefing. Check your gear and supplies. Nobody protested as they ran one last check over the limited but critical gear that they would be taking behind enemy lines. One by one they offered a thumbs up, and as Haku gave the last one, she received a firm nod from Naruto. Silence prevailed in the forest around them as Naruto steeled himself and hopped on the bird. They all looked at each other and didn't miss the fact that somewhere deep inside their hearts they were nervous. It was very likely a one-way trip, and if caught, then their ends would not be pretty. But they were all seasoned shinobi who had lived through war, so no more words were required. Launch! Mangetsu sucked in a breath as the command was given by their leader, which was soon followed by a battle cry from the eagle as it flapped its massive wings, kicking up dust and debris. May was unable to stop her shaking as the beast took the skies, and she felt a nauseous feeling in her gut when she looked down at the increasing distance from the ground. A firm hand was placed on her shoulder, and she looked back to see Naruto staring back at her with a firm but reassuring gaze. It was still clear that he was not happy with her presence, but had accepted responsibility of her life as their commander. His soothing chakra made the uncomfortable feeling in her gut to remain in control, and on his advice she didn't look back down again, and only stared at the sky and the vast sea ahead of them. 10 hours later, Zabuza grimaced as another strong wave of chilling air hit him, and if not for the commander's earlier instruction of using chakra to keep himself steady over the bird, well, it was safe to say he would have met a crappy end, considering all he saw around him were clouds. Very angry clouds. Haku let out a small shriek when the clouds nearby her roared in fury, spitting lightning across the skies. To her embarrassment, Amuri saw her and laughed back even as the red-haired woman tried to stop her own flinching. Mangetsu felt it extremely difficult to see anything as the constant rainfall made it impossible even for him to see through his combat glasses. Even his summon felt uncomfortable flying at 25,000 feet in the midst of a violent storm and heavy rainfall. Jinpachi and Kisame looked at each other, with the latter giving a smirk as the former tried to scratch his balls, which felt like frozen ice after hours of sitting and enduring violent storms. May was shivering from the cold as the temperature was a lot more lower than she had expected. She was also facing difficulty in breathing, leading to more and more labored breaths. She chanced a peek backwards and saw Naruto standing at the rear end of the bird and observing the invisible ground with a nonchalant gaze. She could not imagine what kind of training and hell this man must have been through to remain so composed and unaffected when others around him weren't. The commander then turned towards Haku and raised his right hand to form a fist. The female shinobi gave a single nod as she performed few sets of hand seals. Wind release. Wind rotation. The Yuki clan warrior managed to create perfect small pockets of air concentration across each of her team members' faces. After some adjustment, she also added a watery-looking mask that trapped the limited but critical amount of air against her teammates' masked faces. She also left behind a minute opening for contaminated air to be released. Naruto smirked when he noticed the relief across his teammates, as they could properly breathe again. He then looked at them and raised his clenched fist. One by one they all carefully got up from their seats, but made sure to keep their feet rooted to the bird's back through chakra, for the violent winds and heavy rainfall were trying their best to make them all fall. Naruto entwined both of his hands and received grim nods from his squadmates, as each of them raised their right arm in a pledge and linked it upon the shoulder of the warrior in front of them, with Mei extending her arm towards Naruto. He could see easily that she was terrified of the next part, but something within her gaze showed that she wanted to trust him. That only added more weight to his consciousness as for a second he saw the faces of his S-program comrades staring back at him. Dismissing those thoughts, he remembered and performed the hand signs that were once made by his little brother before shaking his hand with Mei. The female Jinchuriki felt a foreign chakra invading her body, and the same feeling was experienced by each of her squadmates one after another, as they felt the same power enter their body. Naruto looked down, and through his red eyes he saw they were at perfect height for their jump. He also felt the barrier that was waiting to detect them on the ground at 1,000 feet. It was time. He gave a nod and couldn't help but respect the fact that Mangetsu didn't blink as he jumped off the bird. Zabuza was next, followed by Kisame. The others followed suit mere seconds later until only Mei and Naruto left. A lone tear fell from her eyes and her hands were trembling. Naruto gave her a reassuring nod which allowed her to steel herself before she leapt away from safety. Immediately, she regretted her decision as she saw herself falling through the sky with her teammates right below her. She craned her neck but could not see Naruto, but did feel the bird disappearing, which meant the commander had jumped or was made to jump in worst case. Rain and strong winds lashed against her body as she tried to keep her heart from exploding. She saw Kisame pointing his hand downwards and understood the signal as she forced herself to fall faster. It was minutes or mere moments, Mei couldn't tell, but soon enough she saw the silhouettes of her entire team except for the commander flying nearby her. Jinpachi raised a single hand seal and summoned a water-based jutsu in the form of a rope. With a practiced movement, he threw the rope in a circular motion, making Mangetsu grab it first, who then flew towards Zabuza, who grabbed him, followed by others until the entire squad was circled around each other and falling together. Zabuza yelled something with a crazy grin, but nobody could hear amidst the rain and storms. Apparently, he was asking them to make room, which was understood by Jinpachi, who forced everyone to create some space in their circle, and just in time as they saw their commander appear in between the circle. Except he was sporting large black chakra-powered wings on his back. Naruto made a hand seal and called forth the chakra he had distributed among his team before the jump. As if on cue, the chakra rose in the form of ash, which quickly took the form of large black wings, and not too soon as the ground started to become more and more clear. Mei felt the feeling of weightlessness vanish as those wings on her back slowed her fall as they started to flap. The same was the case with the others, who too were now aligned around the commander, who was concentrating and keeping the jutsu running by joining his hands. Ash release. Multiple wing formation. Blood freely flowed from the commander's eyes and nose, but he didn't falter, which in turn allowed him to take full control over the descent of his squad. At this reduced height, few of them felt the barrier approaching, and Mangetsu quickly signaled to Amiri. The female swordsman grinned before performing a quick set of hand seals. Lightning style, rain of death. Summoning forth the bubbling and unstable energy among the clouds, Amiri made dozens of lightning strikes fall upon the ground, which sent ripples across the barrier. Zabuza and Kisame were quick to follow suit as they too made more and more raindrops fall towards the concentrated area where Amiri was raining lightning strikes sporadically. The enemy would easily detect them had they tried to infiltrate during daytime or during peaceful nights, as their chakra would have registered once breaching the barrier. But on a stormy night like this, with lightning strikes and heavy rainfall, it would be difficult to differentiate a water or lightning penetration from a chakra-based human's entry. For this purpose, the entire squad suppressed their chakra as much as they could, for they soon breached through the barrier, all except for the commander, who simply threw a three-pronged kunai, which was caught by Mangetsu. Mei saw Naruto hovering above the barrier and controlling their descent with the wings he had created, but he couldn't enter, for he was using maximum chakra, which the barrier would detect should he breach. The entire team gave out painful grunts when they managed to hit the ground in a rather ungraceful fashion, but quickly regained their bearings and took up combat positions. A bright yellow flash appeared beside them as Naruto rejoined them by teleporting and grabbing the three-pronged kunai in Mangetsu's hand. The commander instantly took to one knee and placed a single finger on the ground. For a few moments nobody spoke and observed their surroundings carefully for any sign of intercepting patrols to attack them. But nothing came, and that was when Naruto gave a grim smile. Successful breach. The squad breathed a sigh of relief on hearing that reply, but soon had to rein in their delight as they saw the vast and tall mountains around them along with the treacherous forest. The reality of being behind enemy lines and completely cut off from any aid hit them all as everyone took out their weapons and looked at Naruto, who gave a firm nod. Showtime, boys and girls. Chapter 14. I Am Death. The clouds continued to roar and unleash torrents of rainfall across the earth without mercy. It had been this way for almost an entire day as Mangetsu watched the fury of nature from the shelter of his cave. The winds were getting more dangerous, and random lightning strikes made it impossible for their squad to venture further into enemy lands without avoiding the risk of detection or damage. It was why their commander had ordered them to bunker down in this cave for the time being and await further orders from him. "Oh, isn't the commander too edgy lately?" asked Amiri with a frown, even as she ate her not-so-pleasant rations. "Yeah. He has a real axe to grind against Kumogakure, and especially the Kinkaku," commented Kisame with a grin, as he continued to drum his fingers against his ordinary sword. "About that, during the Battle of Osaka I witnessed something strange. The Kinkaku are feared across the world, those bastards even captured the second Hokage. Yet they pissed their pants and ordered a retreat when they saw the commander standing against them. If the mere thought of fighting the commander scared the Kinkaku," whispered Haku hesitantly, Mei tried not to say anything even as the swordsmen were chatting amongst themselves. Majority of them were intrigued or terrified of the commander's past, and what impact it might have on this mission. She glanced at Mangetsu and saw him staring at the outside forest where the commander had went ahead to scout. "Most of you cannot understand what the commander has lost, not unless you step into his shoes," advised Mangetsu quietly. "What do you mean?" asked Jinpachi with a frown. "It's his destiny to fight against the arch-rivals of his clan, because of whom he's the last Namikaze in this world," said Mangetsu seriously. Mei perked up as her inner nerd couldn't help but be interested to hear out the Hozuki heir. Even in Kirigakure, not much was known about the Namikaze clan except for the fact that while they were a small clan, their power was not something to scoff at. Few of their clan members were renowned to be one of the most powerful shinobi of their era until the entire clan was wiped out. The story began during the Clan Wars era. While everyone knows about the Uchiha Senju rivalry, not many know about another clash between two equally skilled clans. Both of them were feared for their speed and power. While the richer nations hired the Uchiha and Senju along with their allies to secure their interests, the smaller nations with limited resources hired the Namikaze and Kaizen clan, explained Mangetsu. Kaizen clan? I'm afraid I have never heard of them, said Zabuza with a frown, earning a nod from the Mizukage's son. I'm not surprised you don't know, since they gave up their clan name when they joined the Land of Lightning. However, what may surprise you is the fact that 2 of their members became Kage, said Mangetsu seriously. You mean the first and third Raikage? Asked Haku in surprise, earning a grim nod in return. The current Raikage is also a part of the Kaizen clan. The Uchiha and Senju were known for mass conflict, but not every nation could afford their services. There were times when a more subtle approach was required. The Namikaze and Kaizen clans were feared for their speed. Both clans were never a match for the mighty 2 clans, but had produced some of the finest Black Ops shinobi in the world. While the Uchiha and Senju fought in the light, the Namikaze and Kaizen fought in the shadows for their respective clients. But as the war dragged on, their numbers started to dwindle due to endless conflict. It finally came to an end when the Uchiha Senju formed an alliance which forced other clans to join new factions. This is where the Namikaze clan made a critical mistake, revealed Mangetsu. What mistake? Asked Kisame curiously. They had offers from the Land of Fire and Land of Lightning to join their new hidden villages. However, they valued their independence and didn't believe in the new world forming around them. While the Land of Fire, especially the Senju, were very interested to make the Namikaze clan one of their village members, in the end they respected the Namikaze's decision to stay independent and signed a non-aggression pact. The Land of Lightning did not take this refusal kindly, and instead assimilated the Kaizen clan into the newly formed Kumogakure. With their never-ending grudge against the Namikaze and the backing of their disgruntled daimyo, the Raikage, who was also from the Kaizen clan, launched an all-out attack and wiped out their arch-rivals in a single strike. However, for every Namikaze that was killed, 3 men from the Land of Lightning died as well. Ultimately, numbers were not in the favor of the Namikaze clan, and they were overwhelmed. With no allies to call upon, they were wiped out, explained Mangetsu frankly. The group fell silent after hearing Mangetsu's retelling of the fate of the Namikaze clan. No wonder he hates Kumogakure so much. I can only imagine what being the last of his clan makes him feel, whispered Haku, who was afraid at the mere possibility of her becoming the last member of her flourishing clan. Whatever the case, I have never seen a Black Ops mission like this. I know the Umbu are strong, but what we just did, whispered Kisame seriously, as he remembered the suicidal jump from the skies. I thought I was done for, joked Zabuza. It wouldn't even be funny if things hadn't gone as planned, agreed Jinpachi with a smirk. That just proves we need to believe in the commander, urged Mangetsu. That's too much faith, Mangetsu warned Namuri with a frown. It's true that Naruto's personal vendetta is a risk in this mission, but for all his faults, he is a fine officer. Has he let us down till now? Asked Mangetsu honestly. Silence fell upon the group again, as nobody could refute Naruto's devotion towards the men under his command. Even now, the fact that he was risking his life alone proved that he was someone the squad could depend on. The skies continued to weep furiously and threatened to drench the land in its anger. The winds were becoming more dangerous, and random lightning strikes were proving to be life-threatening. Amidst nature's chaos, one human carefully kept himself hidden in the tall trees of the forest, his red eyes scanning each and every direction with extreme precision. Naruto nodded in satisfaction when he saw a squad of Kumo ninjas passing through the area. Judging from their armament, this was a border patrol. He needed intel before he could take his squad deeper behind enemy lines, and the only source of getting it was through someone within the enemy ranks. Carefully, he started trailing the patrol squad by using the trees as his cover and keeping his chakra suppressed. The easier option would be to kill this patrol and extract intel, but that would blow their cover. He needed the enemy to assume they were safe until the very last moment, so he followed the enemy squad while taking note of the fact that all the men were looking towards the woman in the western direction for guidance. He had found his target. Carefully, he grabbed one of the 3-pronged kunai gifted to him by Ino from his pouch strapped on his leg. Looking at the skies, he waited for a few moments until the next thunder rumbling sounded across the area, and that was when he threw the kunai straight in the direction of the female enemy squad leader. She had no chance, as a dark flash happened before her the very next second, and a pair of crimson eyes gazed into her very soul. Naruto grabbed the kunai embedded in the tree and vanished before his 3 seconds timer was up. He retreated back to his vantage point and saw the female patrol leader shake her head in confusion. He clenched the kunai in his hand, waiting for the possibility of his enemy sounding an alarm. He had marked her just in case and was ready to end her life in a second. Fortunately for her, she didn't remember what had happened just as Naruto wanted and instructed the patrol to move forward, leaving the lone Kiri Exumbu alone. Naruto bit out a small curse as he remembered the information he had gained. Apparently this patrol had no information on the exact whereabouts of the daimyo. But he did learn the fact that there were 7 hideouts across the Kazama Mountains, under one of which was the royal family. However, that area was on a 15,000 feet high mountain. He could not help but admire the enemy's strategic brilliance, as the Kazama Mountains were almost impossible to climb. Humans without chakra had never been able to climb it due to the steep rocks. But even shinobi had failed horribly, as the very same rocks had a violent reaction when they came into contact with any form of chakra. He was not strong enough to make his entire squad fly that high up. Hell, he didn't even have enough skill to make himself fly that high. If only his brother was here. Dismissing those morbid thoughts, he started to think about his next course of action. To reach those mountains, they would have to cross this treacherous forest first, which was full of booby traps and 3 umbu platoons supported by 4 dozen border patrol units. He had a feeling that they would be facing heavy action very soon. To their credit, his team didn't flinch or show fear when he relayed back the intel that he had obtained. He couldn't help but respect their resolve as he waited for anybody to speak up. "You are looking at something we can't even see." "We'll follow your lead," Commander promised Mangetsu, a sincere look ever present in his eyes. The same gaze was present among the others as well. Mei watched Naruto stare at their group with a surprised gaze before a thin smile graced his lips as he nodded at them all. "We go to war tonight." Everybody nodded, even as the heavy rains had finally settled and the sun was starting to peek through the dispersing clouds. Venturing outside now was too dangerous, as it was wise to stay hidden until nightfall and take the enemy by surprise in the dark. They saw the commander heading back outside to take watch, but Mangetsu placed a hand on his shoulder which stopped him. The Mizukage-san gave him a faint smile. "You should rest," suggested Mangetsu in a friendly tone. "I can still." "Don't try to shoulder everything alone, Naruto. Just as we are relying on you, we also want you to rely on us," advised Mangetsu. The blonde-haired commander couldn't help but realize how similar Mangetsu was to his father, in beliefs at least. When he saw the same feelings in the eyes of the others as well, he relented and gave the younger shinobi a nod. "Thank you," he whispered, earning a smirk from Mangetsu as he went outside to take first watch. As he moved deeper into the cave, Zabuza offered him a can of water and Haku offered him the military rations, which he took with a grateful nod. As he sat down to eat his share, he saw everyone staring at him expectantly. "What?" he asked, half irate and half confused. Just curious about the pretty face under that mask, teased Yuri, which made him blush and elicited a laugh from everyone except Mei, who sent a glare towards the other redhead member of their group for that remark. Still, even Mei couldn't hide the fact that she also wanted to see the man under that mask. A part of her felt Ino to be very lucky, while another scolded herself for even thinking in that direction. The man was married and she had no right to intrude, no matter how much her heart wanted to. She raised an eyebrow when Naruto pointed towards the entrance of the cave, making everyone look in that direction, but there was nothing to see except for Mangetsu standing there. Annoyed, the remaining squad turned back towards Naruto only to see him throw away the now empty military rations pack, followed by sealing the empty can of water offered by Zabuza. And he also had that victorious grin on his face as he had fooled everyone. "Sorry, Amuri. Some other time, okay?" teased Naruto with a cheeky smile, earning a huff from the redhead and disgruntled looks from the others, including Mei. "How did you eat and drink so fast?" asked Haku incredulously. Naruto's response was a simple shrug which only served to irate his followers even more. Before anybody could drag him into another conversation, he swiftly laid down on his back and went off to sleep, knowing this would probably be the last time in a while before he could rest again. Mei hesitantly walked outside the cave to move forward in the direction where Naruto was currently sitting. There was a peaceful expression on his face as he watched the setting sun. She, on the other hand, was very nervous, knowing what was to come tonight. "Commander," she called out to him, making him look back at her curiously. His blue eyes looked at her, and she was relieved to see that most of the anger they had previously held within them for her had subsided. He gestured for her to sit, a request she accepted with a thankful smile. Silence ensued between them as Mei too glanced at the setting sun, even as she contemplated how to make things right once again between them. "I'm sorry, Mei," she blinked in surprise on hearing him apologize, but he merely gave her a smile. "I was too harsh on you earlier. I was angry, he said honestly without mincing any words. I did intrude into your plan. The fault is mine. I am sorry for that, but I want you to know that I only wanted to protect the ones whom the village depends upon, she replied nervously, hoping he could understand why she did what she did. He sighed even as he passed his hand through his glowing blonde hair. You're a very important shinobi, Mei. Your existence is the reason why people can sleep at night in peace. I wanted you to watch over the village, and instead you did the opposite to join a suicidal mission. I wanted you to remain safe so that if in the situation where we failed, you could protect the village in our stead, clarified Naruto. I'm not sure most people share your feelings, Commander, answered Mei bitterly, as she remembered the lifelong distrust and scorn her fellow villagers had bestowed upon her just for existing. I can never understand your pain, Mei. Being a Jinchuriki is a painful life, but despite all the hardships you have faced, you turned into a fine shinobi who has the well-being of the people in your heart. One day, the villagers will also see what I am seeing right now, said Naruto confidently. What is it that you see in me, Commander? Asked Mei hesitantly. A hero. Mei's eyes widened on hearing those words, and judging from the calm look in his eyes, Naruto meant what he said, which was something she couldn't understand, and he knew that, so he explained. You have a loving heart and a wonderful soul. It's these two things that makes you strong, that allows you to continue to protect the village despite not receiving recognition for your sacrifice. You never gave up, and even now you set aside your own well-being to protect your comrades. One day the people will see you for the hero you are. In fact, they have already started, explained Naruto seriously. Mei's eyes became moist as she finally remembered the hostile looks she had received from the shinobi of the 501st before the Battle of Osaka. But ever since they returned to the village, few of them had not glared at her, with a handful few even nodding at her when they crossed paths in the village. Even as a few tears rolled down her cheeks, he didn't laugh or mock her for showing weakness. You're a good man, Naruto. Naruto looked away on hearing her say that, knowing it was far from the truth, for he never forgot the way in which he killed so many innocent and guilty people. There was an evil within him that threatened to consume him every day. He blinked when he saw Mei extend her right hand towards him and saw her smile at him. Friends? She asked hopefully, much to his surprise. Naruto had never felt more disgusted with himself than he did now, for he knew that in truth he was an enemy of her. His very existence was a threat to Kirigakure, and someday his secret would be out. He didn't mind if she hated him after that, but that truth would destroy her faith in people. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. He remembered his father's words from long ago and couldn't help but realize they were so true. As he shook Mei's hand, he knew what he had become. Mei watched as Naruto explained the plan of action to the team. Essentially, he wanted them to split into two halves, one led by him and the other led by Kisame. Each squad would have 4 members and would target their respective enemies swiftly. Team Namikaze would be made up of Naruto, Mengetsu, Haku, and Mei. Team Hoshigaki would be made up of Kisame, Zabuza, Amyuri, and Jinpachi. While Naruto's team would encounter and neutralize the Umbu Black Ops guarding the forest, Kisame and his team would neutralize the border patrols made of Kumo regular military. A few in their group had suggested if confrontation could be avoided, but when they saw the pattern in which the enemy was spread across the area, it was almost impossible to avoid contact, or if by some miracle they escaped, that still left their back wide open should the enemy realize their presence. It would be a disaster should the enemy counterattack when their squad was attempting to climb the dangerous Kazama Mountains. They would be cornered completely and wiped out. Mei shuddered on imagining such a scenario and couldn't help but agree more with Naruto's desire to deal with the enemy first before they dealt with them on their own terms. It was possible that the enemy command would notice their border units dropping out of contact and would send reinforcements to investigate. However, that small window was an opportunity their squad would use to scale the mountain and storm the front. After all, they had to make it very clear that they were Kumogakure shinobi hired by the daimyo's rivals within his own family to take him out. That would fracture the trust between the next daimyo and his advisors with Kumogakure, which could become the catalyst to ending this bloody war. She looked at the veterans around her, and couldn't help but feel whether or not she would be able to do what needed to be done. But one look at Naruto strengthened her resolve, as she didn't want to destroy the trust her friend had placed in her. Everybody clear about the strike? Asked Naruto seriously. We'll neutralize our targets and mark the bodies with these sealing tags, repeated Kisame seriously, as he showed one of the tracking seals supplied by Naruto to everyone. That's correct. These seals should allow me to sense the bodies, and with my powers, I will make them disappear forever without any trace for the enemy to investigate, promised Naruto. You'll turn the bodies to ashes? Asked Haku hesitantly. She would never hesitate to eliminate the enemies of her village, but to mutilate bodies? Even enemies should have some respect for each other. Granted, in the shinobi world no such tradition existed, unlike the samurai who showed honor to their enemies even in death. But when she looked into Naruto's cold eyes, all she saw was the gaze of a veteran ex-Anbu willing to do anything for the sake of the mission. That's the way of the Black Ops, answered Naruto without any remorse, making Haku gulp, but she offered no further protest. That will help keep the enemy focused and make them divert critical resources to investigate further. We will use that time to scale the mountain, find out the target's exact location, and strike. Mangetsu, keep your summon ready for our extraction will be violent, ordered Naruto seriously. Mangetsu nodded his acceptance as Naruto looked at his men one last time. For Kiri, the looks in the eyes of his men changed instantly when he whispered those words, and they all looked back at him with merciless eyes as they repeated his words. For Kiri, Team Namikaze, Mangetsu watched Mei and Naruto charging through the forest by his side while Haku kept to the trees and would provide cover fire from up above while the three of them engaged in close-quarter combat. It was imperative they fight the enemy in hand-to-hand combat, and use minimum ninjutsu, for that would be instantly detected by the barrier all around them. Even now, he feared they were already detected, but Naruto had assured them that his ceiling tags currently placed over the armor of every squad member would be enough to keep them invisible to the enemy sensors and barrier team. The enemy wouldn't know about them until they came face to face, at least that was what Mangetsu hoped would happen. He had fought all kinds of ninjas in his life, but he always was wary of going up against the Black Ops shinobi from any nation, for they were the elite and most ruthless warriors of their respective nations. Even Mei shared his feelings if the nervous expression on her face was any indication. But Naruto, those cold red eyes that were so much like the Sharingan, were eager for blood. He could feel the commander's killing intent rising with every passing second, and his hand was itching to grab the sword at his back. Mangetsu steeled himself when he saw the makings of the enemy camp up ahead and heard Naruto unleash his sword. Execute, ordered the masked commander. The first female Anbu on sentry duty barely saw a three-pronged kunai pass by her and gasped when a second later a pair of stone-cold red eyes appeared before her. Mangetsu flinched when he saw Naruto slice through the female Anbu's neck and sever her head in one strike. He didn't stop there, as in mid-air he grabbed the flying head and stuck something inside of it, before throwing it right in the midst of the enemy Anbu camp. Mei heard the enemy camp come to life as purple-colored smoke exploded from the severed head of the female Anbu. The two entrance guards gasped, but a second later fell to the ground courtesy of two saban needles hitting their necks from the trees where Haku was hiding. They were dead before they even hit the ground, as the poison in the needles ended their life. Meanwhile, several Anbu rushed outside of their tents only to get caught in the poison-laced smoke that was spreading everywhere. Team Namikaze, on the other hand, charged through the poison undeterred, as they had already administered the antidote in their systems. Mangetsu jumped straight towards one of the tallest Anbu, who was in the process of performing a wind-style attack to disperse the poison. The enemy growled on seeing him and hacked at him with his sword, but Mangetsu ducked and slapped a seal on the man's leg. Above him, Mei stabbed the enemy straight through the neck with her sword and ruthlessly kicked him deeper into the camp. They both grimaced when the corpse of their fallen enemy exploded into a rain of shrapnel that instantly showered every nearby Anbu, making them cry out in agony. "Those seals are nasty," said Mei disgustedly, as expected from an Anbu officer. "Let's go," replied Mangetsu seriously, as he saw Naruto place his sword on his back and switching to close-quarter combat by drawing a three-pronged kunai in each of his hand. The enemy might have been in a better position to counter, but too many factors were against them. First, the moon was completely covered by clouds, making visibility extremely difficult, but for shinobi of Kiri trained to fight even in the mist, it was an advantage. Second, the entire camp was now covered in the poison-laced smoke unleashed by Naruto at the very start. It had a nasty reaction of instantly paralyzing its victims' motor functions, followed by a gruesome death as it melted their insides. Haku was quick to act and neutralized quite a score of Anbu trying to shake off the preliminary dizziness from the poison. Third, the shrapnel bomb had injured most of the enemy force. While not enough to end their lives, it had created panic and fear among the enemy ranks as they heard their comrades screaming in horror and agony. This three-pronged attack left the enemy blind, injured, and terrified. Mei called Mangetsu, earning a nod from his partner. They both were relieved to see the few Anbu strong enough to fight were being forced to dodge around as Haku's needles rained down everywhere from the trees. Both Kiri shinobi raised a single-hand seal, while Naruto had barred them from using chakra-heavy ninjutsu. This one was designed to consume the least chakra and would not be noticed by the enemy's sensor and barrier teams. Hidden mist jutsu. Naruto saw a thick mist starting to spread across the already vision-impaired area, creating further panic and anger among the enemy. They couldn't see them at all, but he could, as his sharp red eyes showed him the chakra forms of every enemy still alive. His comrades were either sensors or used to fighting in the dark, as he heard them expertly killing the remaining enemy shinobi. He charged past 2 more Anbu and in a flash sliced their throats, mercilessly allowing them to drop dead on the ground. He narrowed his eyes when he saw a hidden Anbu at a nearby treetop who had survived the trap his comrades had gotten themselves into. Judging from the hand signs, he was about to launch a wind jutsu. Naruto instantly threw his 3-pronged kunai towards the enemy and grinned when the man caught it instantly while sending an arrogant laugh downstairs. That laugh abruptly died away when Naruto instantly appeared before the Anbu and stabbed him clean through the heart. The man's heart exploded from the powerful blow as a permanent horrified expression became etched in his dead eyes as he fell to the ground. The Kiri commander looked down and saw there were 20 Anbu still left, and they had huddled around each other in an effort to counterattack. Mangetsu and Mei were moving towards the group, but it would be too late by the time they reached. He cursed as he allowed his chakra in the form of ash to leak from his body and fall directly over the Anbu survivors. He looked at Haku in the nearby trees and gestured for Plan B, to which she nodded. Together, both of them were prepared for this possibility and flawlessly threw several barrier seals across the nearby trees. Naruto clasped his hands together and trapped his own 2 comrades along with the remaining enemy in a small red-colored barrier. Everything trapped inside the barrier would become invisible to the enemy barrier team for the time being, which essentially allowed him to ninjutsu. It was a risk that the enemy would still detect the use of chakra, but it was one he had to take to protect his squad. The Anbu were slowly organizing themselves, and it would not be pretty if they counterattacked. His squad mates were strong but not seasoned enough to battle these many ruthless Anbu all at once. He made his decision as the ash expertly blended in the smoke around the Anbu survivors. Mangetsu and Mei had stopped their advance when they sensed the barrier going up around them, and on hearing Haku's warning whistle they instantly retreated back to the edge where Naruto allowed them to exit the barrier. To his surprise, the enemy Anbu had caught the trail and were also following. Quickly, he sealed the exit just as Mei escaped and clasped his hands together. Ash release, explosion. Haku shielded her eyes as a bright light engulfed the barrier completely, and then everything went silent. Mangetsu and Mei watched as the barrier slowly fell apart, and as the smoke cleared, both of them gulped on seeing nothing remaining of the enemy camp or its inhabitants. All that remained was charred earth. Mangetsu hesitantly touched the darkened soil and couldn't help but fail to recognize this black soil from the ashes of the men and women who had died moments ago before his very eyes. He flinched when Naruto jumped beside him and calmly observed the destruction he had inflicted. The words said by the commander next sent a shiver down the hearts of his 3 comrades. I am become death, Kirigakure. Genjutsu Hozuki was very angry. Not only were his negotiations with Tobarama Senju making very slow progress, but he also had additional problems to deal with apart from the ongoing war. He stared at the unconscious man dragged before him and currently being held by his arms through 2 Anbu officers as the Anbu commander stood aside and looked at him. What made Genjutsu more angry was the fact that he knew this Jounin, who was one of the top-ranking officers from the Hunter Corps. Lord Second, there is no mistake. Kage has confessed to his capital crimes and has admitted to being a spy of the Wagakure, reported the Anbu commander flatly, although if one listened carefully then the man's own hidden anger was barely audible in his voice. Genjutsu gestured for the other Anbu to take away the prisoner to his cell where he would be soon subjected to Kiri's infamous hospitality. But the Mizukage's thoughts were already drifting to another subject. How many more wolves do you think are existing in our home? Asked Genjutsu bitterly. Kage would not be the first. I suggest we do a thorough background check of every shinobi serving under respective branches of our military, suggested the Anbu commander. That would take too much time. We need to weed them out now, barked Genjutsu frustratedly. How was he supposed to win a war if he couldn't even trust his own men? Understood, Lord Second. I will form a small squad of Anbu who are loyal to the village. Together under my command, we will weed out the traitors, promised the Anbu commander. I want to evaluate the men you choose for this mission before you start. And not a word about this to anyone else, or it could fracture the morale of our troops, warned Genjutsu, earning a nod from one of his most loyal officers. It will be done, Lord Second promised the Anbu commander. Is there any support you require from me? Asked the Mizukage seriously, earning another nod in return from his subordinate. It's actually about one of the shinobi I want to recruit for this mission. She is infamous for being one of the best interrogators among the hunters. I want to recruit her, requested the Anbu leader. What's her name? Asked Genjutsu seriously. If someone had caught this man's gaze for their skill, then they were definitely someone Genjutsu was interested in, for it was this very man who had recommended Naruto for one of the 7, and it had turned out quite well for the village and for the Mizukage himself. Ino Namikaze. Instantly, the Mizukage tensed as he heard that name. This was possibly a dangerous mission for everyone involved, as there was no prediction as to how the traitors within their ranks would react once the trap started to squeeze around them. Could he really endanger Naruto's wife like this? But he dismissed those thoughts. His loyalty was first towards the village rather than one of his subordinates alone. You can recruit whomever you want, including Ino Namikaze. But first conduct a complete background check on her history and present the report to me. Only post my approval will she be made a part of the team. The same procedure will be followed for the other recruits of your team, instructed the Mizukage. It will be done, Lord Second assured the Anbu commander. Genjutsu watched the man hesitate for a second, but in the end he decided to speak what was on his mind. I will do a complete check on Ino and others whom I want to recruit. But what about my check? Asked the Anbu leader hesitantly. Genjutsu smirked. Leave that to me. Besides, I trust you. However, as a precaution you will undergo a check directly by me, ordered Genjutsu. I am ready, Lord Second. Genjutsu noted the fearless tone of this man and doubted he had anything to hide, yet he couldn't afford any mistakes. He could not accuse anyone innocent to be a traitor, but at the same time he could not be too lax with the security of the village, especially during this time of war. Sooner or later, he had to weed out the spies hiding within his village. Chapter 15, Lost Boy Chronicles, Part 3. Naruto stared at the vast mountain in front of him and couldn't help but clench his fists. The fact that he couldn't even see its top with his red eyes was a testament to its greatness. No wonder humans, or even shinobi, couldn't scale it till this day. He saw the looks of disbelief present in the eyes of his squad. It was no doubt that they could easily scale this 15,000 feet high mountain if they could use chakra, but without it, it was suicide. And that was exactly what they had to do. Are we scaling that? Whispered Mei in awe and fear as she pointed at the top of the mountain hidden in the clouds. Mangitsu saw Naruto bring out his special 3-pronged kunai and distribute a pair to each of his squadmates. He twirled a similar pair in his fingers casually with a nonchalant gaze. How the fuck are we going to scale that? Asked Zabuza in disbelief. He blinked when he saw Naruto suddenly throw one of his special kunai hundreds of feet high in the air as he vanished before their very eyes. Mangitsu narrowed his eyes when he saw Naruto had left behind the other kunai previously in his hand on the ground. He looked up when he heard few of the others gasp, and their shock was not unwarranted as he saw the commander appear hundreds of feet high and catch the sailing kunai he had thrown. He then threw the weapon even higher with the same force while also unleashing another one of those special kunai straight towards the mountain, where it stuck perfectly and embedded itself in the rock. The entire squad was further shocked when a sturdy line of rope rolled down from the handle of that kunai straight towards the ground. By the time they all looked up again, all that was visible were faint yellow flashes in the dark sky that were slowly becoming impossible for the naked eyes to see. But they did realize what the commander was doing. A genius like him is born once a generation, whispered Haku with respect. How can he do this? Said Mei in awe and fear. They all waited in stunned silence as the flashes disappeared in the dark sky, but as far as they could see, more and more kunai were embedded across the entire mountain with ropes attached. After a few minutes, Naruto flashed back to the ground by grabbing the kunai he had left behind on the ground. He collapsed to one knee and his eyes were bleeding, but he clenched his fists and took in a few deep breaths. Commander, said Mei worriedly, as she took in a few steps forward to check his injuries. She stopped right in her tracks when the blood falling from his eyes suddenly stopped and vaporized. Through her sensory powers, she had felt the stress his body had been under previously, but now his fatigue and minor wounds were healing instantly. In less than 30 seconds, he was standing tall and proud before them once more. Hope you have steady hands, said Naruto seriously. What kind of hell have you been through to become this strong? Asked Jinpachi hesitantly, having never imagined his fellow shinobi to be so powerful. I still didn't reach the top. We'll have to climb the last 500 feet the hard way, apologized Naruto. Most of the squad couldn't help but sigh at the man's modesty, or his clear lack of self-pride. Still, that didn't affect him as he walked towards the spot where the rope was ready. He gestured for Yuri to come forward and helped her tie that rope firmly across her body, and showed her how to tightly hold the twin three-pronged kunai in her hand. The others watched attentively as Naruto showed them the best angles where they could dig their kunai into the rock to get a firm grip, followed by telling them about the best places to position their legs and how to pull themselves upwards. To everyone's utter relief, the commander, through a demo by his water clone, showed that it was possible to not fall to their deaths immediately should their arms tire, or they lose the grip over their digging kunai in the rocks, as the sturdy rope tied across their body as safety was strong enough to bear a person's weight for a minute before it became strained. Naruto had also positioned the kunai-drawn ropeway across the mountain to distribute weight equally and prepare for adverse situations. This level of calculation, planning, and swift execution in mere seconds. Even our Umbu Black Ops are not trained in this kind of warfare, but there were 2 other Black Ops groups trained in such warfares. One of the groups is extinct, and the other is what we may be going up against soon. How does he know the same tactics? Thought Mangetsu suspiciously. Mangetsu couldn't deny what Naruto was doing was magnificent, but the way he was so calm and knew exactly what to do showed he had done something like this before. Just like their jump from the skies few days back. Demon, killer. Mangetsu's eyes widened as he remembered a particular incident from the battle in Osaka. The Kinkaku unit members had instantly recognized who Naruto was and had called him by that name. There were too many coincidences happening here, and something was not right. But since he had no proof, he kept his lips shut and obeyed the orders issued as he got in line to climb the mountain. As he walked towards the base of the mountain, his gaze caught a fleeting sight of Naruto's red eyes that looked at him with a knowing gaze which sent shivers down Mangetsu's heart, but he kept on walking even as a part of his heart screamed of danger. But nothing happened, making Mangetsu breathe a sigh of relief as he strapped the rope around his body. As he stabbed his special kunai into the rock to begin his climb, he couldn't help but feel those red eyes were following him. Kirigakure, Ino sat calmly in her chair and showed no emotion across her face, even as the other occupants of the grim room looked at her stoically. Even if their faces were covered by their umbu masks, she saw their intentions clearly in their eyes. Their fingers were itching to grasp the swords at their back and slice her head off right away should she fail. She saw Sakumo Hatake in the group of umbu standing beside the Mizukage as the umbu commander stood beside her with his hands upon her head. If only these people knew there was another spy in their midst apart from her. She could only imagine how dumb the Mizukage would look if Sakumo Hatake, who was the second in command of the Umbu Black Ops after the Umbu commander, was also revealed to be an enemy spy. And he was not the only one. Having such dangerous knowledge made her a risk, which was why Sakumo was here. Should she show any signs of betraying the village, then he would kill her before Kirigakure could get her hands on her, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. But it would never come to that. She wouldn't let it happen. Ino couldn't help but understand Naruto's feelings a little more now towards his village. She remembered asking him once as to why he went so far to protect Yuzu when he lost everything in his life in that task. He had smiled and his words echoed in her heart as the Umbu commander began his jutsu over her. No matter what darkness lies in the village, I am still Minato Namikaze of Yuzushiogakure. It had been years since she had seen her village, but she could still feel the bright sunlight that radiated there every day. The sound of children laughing and playing in the streets while the Hokage faces watched over them all protectively. She could still remember the pride in the eyes of various ninjas from different clans as they all wore the same uniform to protect what they all held dear, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Naruto, we both are the same. You fight to protect your home and I'll fight for mine. Ino Namikaze called out the Mizukage flatly. She felt the Umbu commander trying to enforce the curse seal over her in order to make her speak the truth. Alas, he didn't realize that they had all walked into the trap she had designed. The Umbu commander gave the Mizukage a nod confirming that the curse seal was in effect, but froze when a pair of Sharingan eyes stared right into his soul. Ino stilled her breathing and relaxed when she saw Mikoto Uchiha trap the Umbu commander in her genjutsu without anyone noticing. The 13-year-old Uchiha girl dressed in Umbu gear stood behind Sakumo, who gave Ino a hidden nod. The Yamanaka Kunoichi quickly connected her conscience to the mind of the Umbu commander through the hand he had laid upon her. The man was now as good as her puppet. With Mikoto's Sharingan and Ino's own mind-controlled jutsu, they were able to make the curse seal vanish without anyone noticing. "Where were you born?" asked the Mizukage seriously. Kirigakure replied Ino calmly, as the Mizukage looked at his trusted Black Ops commander for confirmation. "It's true," Lord Second answered the Umbu commander calmly. Ino saw the Mizukage nod in relief without ever realizing that while it was the Umbu commander who confirmed that lie, it was her and Mikoto's will that made him confirm it. The said man was already trapped completely in the Uchiha's genjutsu, and even when this interrogation was over, he would always believe he had told the truth, as the Uchiha and Yamanaka Kunoichi were altering his memories completely at this very moment. No matter what darkness lies in my village, I will protect it, Naruto. Mei gasped in sheer exhaustion as she pulled herself another feet upwards and stabbed her alternate three-pronged kunai in a sturdy rock above. She peeked downstairs and gulped on seeing just tiny dots of the once tall trees below in the forest. Above her she heard Haku heaving tiredly as she tried to keep herself steady even as the wind started to get more thin. Mangetsu would be lying if he didn't think this mission to be the most toughest one of his life. Even if he had prepared himself for situations like these, his resolve was being tested with every feet higher that he went. He cursed when a few minor rocks fell on him from above, forcing him to grasp his kunai even more tightly. He looked up to see Jinpachi trying to get his footing right once again lest he slip to a gruesome death. The Hozuki heirs saw their commander had reached what looked to be a ridge large enough to make them all sit, much to everyone's relief. Everyone get ready. I will teleport you all here one by one. Aim Yuri first, instructed the commander. Naruto stabbed his three-pronged kunai in the rock behind him, and when he got the nod from the redhead fighter, he raised a single-hand seal and instantly grasped Aim Yuri, as she appeared right beside him with an alarmed look on her face. The fuck? Gasped Aim Yuri in relief and exhaustion as she literally collapsed. Naruto paid her no attention but instead focused upon his remaining comrades hanging across the mountain at various interventions waiting for their turn. His own chakra reserves were shrinking very low, and he doubted the others were faring any better. One after another he pulled each of them over the ridge until only Mangetsu and Mei were left. Your eyes are bleeding, Commander, whispered Haku worriedly, even as she tried to catch her breath. Take a breath for a while before pulling these two up, advised Kisame seriously. Naruto was about to consider that suggestion when they all heard an alarmed cry. He looked down only to see Mei screaming as the last part of the rope holding Mangetsu snapped. Mangetsu only had a second to blink before he felt himself falling thousands of feet below. He cursed and connected his hands with the rocks, hoping to regain control, but in haste allowed chakra to seep in. Mangetsu! Yelled Haku in alarm. Naruto hurriedly threw his three-pronged kunai downwards as a violent explosion happened when Mangetsu's chakra-laced hands connected with the rocks in desperation. As he saw the now unconscious and badly bleeding younger boy falling to his death, he once again saw the faces of his dead comrades whom he couldn't protect in the past. This time I will protect my comrades. Luck was finally on his side as his kunai reached a few hundred feet near the falling Mangetsu, allowing Naruto to teleport in mid-air. He hurriedly threw another kunai that embedded itself into Mangetsu's shoulder, and the very next second both shinobi teleported back to the ridge where the rest of the squad quickly grabbed them firmly before they fell again. Naruto grimaced on seeing a good chunk of Mangetsu's left shoulder was blown off due to the explosion, and he was bleeding profusely. There were also small rock shards that had dug deep into his exposed flesh and were making matters worse. At this rate, he was as good as dead. He's finished, remarked Zabuza bitterly. Shut your mouth. We can still save him, berated Haku furiously, as she tried to move towards her injured friend only to be stopped by her fellow swordsman. The Mizukage will have our heads if Mangetsu dies, said Jinpachi worriedly. We cannot stay here forever, Commander. We need to climb this mountain, and we cannot carry Mangetsu in the state that he is. With the way he is now, our extraction plan is fucked, advised Kisame seriously. Perhaps we should retreat before we face any more losses, suggested Mei hesitantly. Commander. The said man looked at the dying young boy in his arms and couldn't help but feel conflicted. The mission came above everything else, that was the ninja creed, but he looked at his squad and saw despair, fear and worry in their eyes. Flashback. 15 years ago, a 9-year-old boy with blonde hair currently stood in a room full of shinobi from his own village. Unlike the arguing men and women, he was calm and composed, just like the woman currently leading this meeting. What was common between them was the fact that they both looked much alike with beautiful blonde hair, fair skin and same eyes. Another 6-year-old boy with flat red hair stood beside the older boy and looked at the adults around him with worry in his eyes. The older blonde boy placed a calm hand over the shoulder of the newly graduated genin. Don't worry, Nagato. We will not lose, promised the older boy with an eye smile even as his face remained covered behind his traditional face mask. Minato and Ai-chan, why are they saying we cannot win? Are we going to die? asked Nagato worriedly. Minato clenched his fist on seeing the fear in his little brother's eyes, and he was not alone, as most of the Uzumaki shinobi had the same feelings, for the enemy outnumbered them 4-1. It was another attempt by Kumogakure to seize Yuza's lands, and this time they had staged a massive attack. Their smaller village had barely recovered from the last attack and didn't have enough shinobi to defend itself from another invasion. Minato Namikaze was no stranger to war. Having lost his father early in his life made him become a shinobi. At the very beginning, his superiors recognized he was not an ordinary child. He was faster than most adults, and was an expert swordsman by the time he turned 8. Unlike most young genin, he advanced faster through the ranks and recently became a chunin when he successfully led the defense of one of the border villages of their nation against 4 Kumo's strike forces. His people called him a genius, but Minato knew he was able to do what he could because of the woman in front of him. Inoue Namikaze looked at her eldest son and couldn't help but swell with pride. He reminded her so much of Tobirama with the way he carried himself and the fierceness with which he protected his younger brother. "Minato, what do you think?" she asked her son, referring to the battle map, making the boy step forward even as the crowd fell silent. Even the most veteran jounin in the room couldn't understand why their commander trusted her son so much. Granted, he was powerful for his age, but... They stopped their whispering when Minato pointed at a section of the map, making Inoue smile. She looked at her son and gave him an acknowledging nod, for he had seen through the enemy's weakness. In a way, he had inherited his fighting prowess from Tobirama, but his intelligence and cunning from his mother. "The enemy outnumbers us, and we cannot survive a full-fledged battle. We barely have 500 fighters against their 2,000. We will follow the plan I have explained," ordered Inoue, who herself was a Tobuketsu jounin, and in charge of this force as per the will of the Mizukage. "But," asked an outraged chunin. "We can take them, Commander," protested another jounin furiously. "Only a coward would back down from a fight," scolded someone from the crowd. Inoue couldn't help but sigh inwardly when arguments started happening among her subordinates, which was soon likely to divulge into chaos. She narrowed her eyes when she saw both her sons using that chance to slip away from the meeting. Inoue had followed the trail left behind by her younger son once the meeting got over. It had not been perfect, but she had managed to make the others fall in line with her strategy, which would be implemented tomorrow. Even if there were a few more things to plan, she still wanted to see her boys first before she lost track of them. It gave her great pride to know that her sons cared deeply for each other and looked out for one another. She had been scared that Minato would not be able to accept his half-brother, but her eldest was a kind child who had accepted his little brother. Both her sons were quite strong even for their young age, with some Uzumaki even calling them the reincarnation of the great Senju brothers. But they couldn't be far from the truth. She landed in the open forest ground and saw both her boys standing against each other fully armed. Nagato was the first to make his move by unleashing his most dangerous arsenal. Inoue's eyes turned red as she activated her own Sharingan passed down to her by her own father. She flinched when Minato activated his own red eyes, but unlike hers, his wasn't complete. Inoue could only imagine the force he could become if he truly mastered his eyes and unlocked their full potential. While she reminisced, her sons had started their battle. Chakra in the form of ash was released from Nagato's body and hovered around him protectively as the younger boy took out his tanto. He made a hand seal and instantly the ash rushed forward towards his elder brother. "He's getting better at controlling his Kekai Genkai. I wonder how will you respond, Minato?" thought Inoue curiously. Nagato ignited the ash, turning it into a raging wall of fire heading towards his brother, who didn't move an inch from his spot. Inoue couldn't help but see an echo of Tobirama in her eldest when her son merely raised a single finger, summoning forth water present in the air itself that clashed against his brother's jutsu. But it was his next move that left his mother speechless. Inoue with her Sharingan saw perfectly the way in which her eldest threw his own tanto towards his little brother. Nagato's vision was hindered due to the steaming mist created from the explosion, but Minato could see everything clearly thanks to his half-broken Sharingan. He made the hand seal for his clan's jutsu, and the very next moment he flashed beside his younger brother by catching that tanto that flew an inch past from Nagato's face. The younger boy gasped when he felt the tip of that sharp weapon pointed at his throat, which made him surrender with a resigned smile. "Elder brother, you've got to teach me this cool jutsu. It's mother's, isn't it?" asked Nagato excitedly, when Minato removed the tanto from his throat. "Only if you keep this a secret from her and follow my training," replied Minato in a serious tone, but his eyes softened when he saw his little brother nod fanatically. "I will." Imagine Ka-chan's reaction when she finds out both of us have started mastering her Hiroshin jutsu," asked Nagato excitedly. Minato finally smiled and ruffled Nagato's hair, earning a laugh from the younger boy. Inoue couldn't help but clench her fists in anger. Her sons were all she had left, and someday they would become great warriors. Minato even had the potential to be a Kage someday. How could she condemn their future, their light, their bond to the darkness of the Black Ops? The Mizukage had broached the subject too many times with her, and she had a feeling soon the man would issue an order rather than a request. The village wasn't blind to the potential of her sons. Minato was the strongest of his generation, a prodigy the Uzumaki clan had not seen since the end of the Clan Wars era. They wanted him to join the S program, Yuzu's first special Black Ops unit that would protect the village from the shadows. If Minato was recruited, Nagato would not be left behind and follow in the footsteps of his beloved older brother. What was she supposed to do? Both the boys became alert when she landed in the open ground and looked at them smirk. Minato was the first to gauge her intentions and looked at his sibling with a hidden smile. Together, both boys charged at her, and in them Inoue saw the two men she had loved and lost. Her boys got closer, but they were surprised when instead of attacking, she embraced them both fiercely in her arms. Nagato laughed boyishly and returned her affection, but Minato looked in her eyes and Inoue had a feeling that perhaps he sensed her fears. Inoue heard a soft ruffle against the entrance of her small tent, and was surprised when she saw her eldest son enter after a pause. "Nagato?" she asked worriedly, making him smile. "He's fine. Asleep like a log," joked Minato with a smirk over his face. "Come here," she gestured with a smile, and frowned when he hesitated. "You're not too old yet," she chided him, which finally made him relent and approach towards her. He hesitantly allowed her to wrap her arms around him and pull him in a warm embrace. She removed his face mask, making him flinch, and it pained her to see him react like this. Even now he was afraid. After all these years of Ihiko's death, Minato still feared losing anyone he loved again. He had few friends and most of the time he spent around his brother and mother, but Inoue knew it was more of an involuntary response to ensure his last two family members were always safe. But he was growing up too fast for her, and one day he wouldn't be her little boy anymore, so she cherished this moment which she had now. "You can do it, Ka-san." She heard him whisper those words and angled herself so she could look at his face, but more importantly in his eyes. "We cannot overwhelm the enemy force the way they are now. You taught me it's better to attack a divided and weakened force than a strong and united one. The supply fleet of ships will be approaching our islands in a few days. If we take them out and lure the enemy deeper into our lands, straining their strength, we can win," advised Minato insistently. "The others don't believe in my plan. It's too risky, and we could also lose more territory to the enemy if we don't win," said Inoue hesitantly. "I believe in you." Inoue's eyes became moist when she saw the unwavering faith her son had in her plan and her abilities. That determination, he was willing to walk into hell with her without any regrets. "The village is the key. We exist because Yuzu exists. If we fail, there is no future for our people. We cannot let father's home, our home, to be destroyed. I'm sure the others share my feelings, which is why we will follow you no matter the outcome. So please believe in yourself," requested Minato sincerely. "Why do you believe in me so much, Minato?" asked Inoue in a whisper, as tears continued to fall from her eyes. "You inherited father's will. No matter the pain or hardship that came your way, you pulled yourself up to re-enlist as a ninja. You swore to protect Yuzu, our comrades, your sons, with all your heart, everything that father died for. Even now, you are trying to protect us all. You and father are my heroes," he said honestly with a smile. Inoue had never understood why the Mizukage and many of the top officers were interested in her eldest son so much. Granted, he was powerful, but he was too young for the responsibility they wanted to entrust him with. But now, as she looked at him, she realized it was his unwavering will that made them all want to believe in him. His determination made him copy her jutsu even with his broken Sharingan. Granted, he had barely learned the basics, but he never gave up. It was only her that looked at him as a child and wanted to shield him. "Minato, I wish your father could see the man you have become," whispered Inoue sadly. But even if Yahiko's absence pained her, she could not help but look at her son with pride in her eyes. "There's no time for regrets, Ka-chan. Let's make the enemy repent for messing with us," suggested Minato, as he extended his fist towards her. Inoue couldn't help but smile proudly as she bumped her fist against his. "You have become a fine shinobi, my son." Inoue Namikaze looked at the small company of ninjas gathered around her, all of them currently looking at the ocean ahead of them. If their intel from one of the captured enemy shinobi was correct, the supply ships should be heading for their shores tonight. While half of her company pretended to engage the main enemy force on the land, she and the remaining half of her company would destroy the enemy's supplies. She saw both of her sons standing at the edge of the small mountain alongside her, and took solace in the fact that they were fearless. "They're here," reported Minato, as he removed his finger from the ground. Inoue had been quite surprised when her eldest had displayed great sensory powers, another trait he inherited from his blood father. There was once a time when she had loved Tobirama. After all, he had saved her life when a common client had hired both of their clans to defend his territory. Those few months they had spent together were tough, but she had seen a softer side of Tobirama that had drawn her to him. But it all fell apart the day the Senju and Uchiha united. Her clan refused to ally with the new hidden villages, and her younger self had believed in that mistake. Her son had been born not long after their clan was wiped out. It was not as if she didn't want to reach out to Tobirama, but doubted Konoha as an entity would be willing to accept any Namikaze clan survivors when their clan was clearly at war with Kumogakure. Hashirama was a pacifist, and if push came to shove, he would sacrifice her and his own nephew if it ensured peace in his village. A man who could betray his own best friend and then murder him was not someone she could trust her child's life with. But now another war had started and her sons were yet again in danger. The guilt of never telling Minato about his true father haunted her every day. Her son was too smart, and perhaps even knew that Yahiko had not been his father, yet he never asked her the truth for he cared about her feelings too much. Maybe once this conflict was over, she could make him meet his father. "Let's go, everyone," she commanded, as she saw the ships on the horizon. Together, they all took up positions across the beach and waited for the enemy convoy to get close. No one ever told that it was the wait before the battle that made most shinobi nervous, knowing anything could happen. Inoue saw the same feelings in Nagato's eyes and patted his head gently, making him smile at her. She wanted nothing more than for him to be away from this conflict, but the village had enlisted every able-bodied citizen above the age of 5 capable enough to fight in order to survive this war. Her son was no exception. The fact that he was strong made his enlistment all the more quicker. Not that he objected, for he had always wanted to fight beside his mother, an elder brother whom he admired. "Remember, we need those supplies. Try not to destroy them. The crew are free game," instructed Inoue seriously. "Understood, Commander," replied many of her men in a whisper. Inoue didn't hesitate in giving the signal to attack when the ships came in their perfect range. The very first to react was her eldest son, who quickly performed 7 set of hand seals. Water style, whirlpool swirl. The enemy convoy of ships suddenly found themselves in great danger, as the sea beneath their ships rocked violently. As the opposing currents of water clashed, gigantic whirlpools were created that sent shivers down many shinobi's hearts. Inoue watched Minato and felt a little sad when she saw only one emotion in his eyes. His Sharingan had nothing but hatred in them, and he had no mercy for those who had killed the only man he had considered as his father. "Dispose the crew. Grab the supplies, sink the ships," ordered Inoue. Instantly, each and every shinobi from Yuzu grabbed a kunai and launched them into the air. Inoue nodded at her youngest son, who returned her gesture as he clasped his hands together. "Ash release, laser circus." Minato watched in fascination as his brother unleashed ash from his body that grabbed a hold of all the kunai launched by their force into the air. "Elder brother!" Nagato grinned when his brother answered his call by stepping beside him and placing his hand upon the redhead boy's forehead. It was as if someone had opened Nagato's third eye, as he could now feel and even see faint visages of the enemy shinobi courtesy of their chakra. Minato maintained the storm of whirlpools while also trying his best to relay the position of each and every enemy shinobi on that ship to his brother. "It's time to end this, Nagato. For father," whispered Minato encouragingly, when he saw his brother hesitate. The little boy nodded as he clenched his fist, unleashing the rain of kunai upon the trapped enemy convoy. Inoue, along with the rest of the Uzumaki, watched in fascination and horror as the two brothers rained death upon the enemy. The attack was swift and precise, as Inoue's Sharingan clearly showed her the enemy fall one after another. The screams of the dead and the dying echoed across the beach until only dead silence remained. The whirlpools disappeared, leaving behind battered and damaged ships full of nothing but dead bodies and precious supplies. "Can't dance anymore. How disappointing." Inoue flinched on hearing that merciless remark from her eldest son, but before she could reprimand him for his cruelty, both her boys charged towards the enemy convoy without any fear. He reminds me of Madara Uchiha from the old days. Inoue clenched her fist and looked at the oldest member of her force. The said man was in his late 40s and had been one of the few to survive the Clan Wars era. "Ikoma, what are you saying?" asked Inoue tersely. "These two are more similar to the infamous Uchiha brothers than the Senju brothers, as most of our people believe. Someday the world will tremble before their might," said Ikoma Uzumaki with a satisfied smile. Inoue didn't remark on that comment, but instead ordered her stunned company to focus upon stealing the enemy's supplies and sinking those ships, but those words continued to haunt her heart. Few hours later, by the time their company returned to their camp, everyone was in a victorious mood. Morale was up until few of the shinobi from the diversion party sent to keep the main enemy force engaged returned back. Just one look at their horrified and broken faces dampened everyone's spirits. The information they conveyed left much of the camp in despair and fear. It was why Inoue found herself standing in front of her sons while Ikoma stood by her side. She looked at her youngest and saw him looking at her worriedly. In contrast, her eldest's eyes were calm despite knowing what was coming for them. She knew what she had to do. "Nagato, go back to the village and get reinforcements," with Ikoma instructed Inoue seriously. "But, that's an order." "Obey." Nagato flinched on that harsh tone and the stone-cold look in his mother's eyes. He felt a hand being placed on his shoulder and saw his elder brother giving him a smile. "We're counting on you," said Minato with a nice smile, and felt his brother relax a little. "You'll be okay, elder brother?" asked Nagato hesitantly, as he tried not to look at his mother, whose own gaze softened at her youngest's kind-hearted nature. She didn't miss the momentary hesitation in Minato's eyes, which was quickly hidden behind a practiced smirk as he poked his sibling's forehead. "Of course, Baka. It's me who's supposed to look after you and not the other way around." "Kami, you can be so annoying," muttered Minato, making Nagato chuckle and even making Inoue smile. Ikoma nodded at Inoue before gesturing for Nagato to follow him. The younger boy was surprised when he was joined by quite a few other younger children before they all started their hasty retreat to their village. Minato watched his brother disappearing further away with every passing second. A part of him was relieved knowing Nagato would be safe, but another part of him was sad that this would probably be the last time they would see each other. "You can go with them if you want," Minato said Inoue with a smile. She had discussed this before with him as well privately, but to no avail. Even if she hated endangering his life, her son was too powerful a shinobi to be kept in the rear. Ikoma had not lied when he said her sons were strong, especially her eldest, whom many believed to be a prodigy. Her eyes widened when Minato looked back at her with his trademark eye smile. "I won't leave you behind, Kaa-chan." Inoue had never been more proud of her children than she did now. Looking at her eldest and his loyalty towards his family and village reminded her of Tobarama, for he had been the same. For he too chose his family and village over her. She looked at her son and realized it was time to stop worrying about him and let him make his own choices. She bent down so she could be on his level and looked into his eyes that were the exact same as hers. "Minato, there is something that I have not been telling you," confessed Inoue hesitantly. "What is it?" asked her son with a raised eyebrow. "The Mizukage and the village elders are interested in recruiting you for a Black Ops unit. The very first of our nation. You are an exceptional shinobi and they want you to protect our village from the shadows," said Inoue honestly. "Like the Kinkaku from Kumogakure that we're hearing about?" asked Minato curiously. Inoue nodded dreadfully, knowing that this unit was being formed to especially deal with the likes of the Kinkaku and other special ops battalions that various nations would surely create in time. She lowered her gaze, knowing this was the perfect chance her son had been waiting for to get more revenge against the ones responsible for Yahiko's death. "I'll pass." Shocked, Inoue looked at her son with wide eyes and gasped when she saw he was dead serious about what he just said. "I became a shinobi to protect our village and to honor father's wish. But there is something more important that I am fighting for," whispered Minato as he lowered his gaze. "What is it?" asked Inoue in a gentle voice, and saw her son touching his father's face mask. "That I would protect my family no matter pain came my way. You and Nagato are everything to me. I will not leave you alone, so you better get used to having me around," replied Minato with a cheeky grin. He was surprised when a soft but strong pair of arms wrapped around him, and he found himself pulled into a warm hug. His eyes widened when he heard his mother sniffing, making him place a hand on her back. Inoue didn't say anything and embraced her child more. She had been so afraid all her life. Afraid of the ones who killed her clan, afraid of her first love leaving her, afraid of the future after her husband's death, afraid for her sons. She had been so worried for her eldest son, thinking Yahiko's death would completely change him. In a way it did, but even now her real son was still in there who cared about her and his little brother more than revenge. "You truly are a kind child," she whispered as she kissed his cheek. "Don't do that." "I'm a grown-up now," whined Minato with a pout. They both tensed when Minato sensed what they were all dreading and in no way realized the same as she looked into her son's eyes. Their Sharingan awakened at the same time as both mother and son nodded at each other. Minato had been through a few battles in his short life, with having experienced his first kill at the age of 7. He could still remember that look of disbelief in the Kumogakure Genin's eyes when a boy years younger than him took him by surprise as he jumped from the rear and carelessly plunged a kunai in his neck. He could still remember how that boy had choked and drowned in his own blood while barely being able to call out for his mother. He had not been able to eat for 2 days after that, but mission after mission, battle after battle, the bodies kept increasing and the pain got easier until it was nothing but instinct. A part of his heart felt remorse for those whom we killed, knowing they had families of their own, but that didn't hold him back as he did what he had to do in order to protect his own family. As he stared at hundreds of Kumogakure forces charging at them, he knew what had to be done. He removed his tanto from the scabbard on his back as he looked at his mother, who nodded at him. Half of their force had been almost wiped out during the earlier mission when they tried to divert the enemy's attention. While that did lead to the enemy losing critical supplies, but that made them more desperate and vicious, which was why they were determined to charge into Yuza's mainland in order to reinforce their supplies. The Yuza forces had tried to stop them but were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Even now it was the same, with barely 200 to 240 Uzumaki clansmen standing against nearly 1,700 to 1,800 bloodthirsty enemy forces. Strike Team. Minato quickly joined the front line alongside their most strongest Jounin and Chunin on his mother's command. Support Team. The youngest members of their force, who were hiding in the trees, prepared themselves as the enemy force was about to get into range. Barrier Team. A handful of Uzumaki well versed in their clan's famous arts took up the rear and waited for their leader's next order. Inoue steeled herself as the enemy force showed no intention of turning back and quickly went through a practice set of hand seals. Summoning Jutsu. The enemy army came to an abrupt halt when a ferocious roar echoed across the entire battlefield with the arrival of a giant wolf with demonic red eyes. The beast had 3 tails and brown fur. Its 4 paws were nimble yet contained sharp nails that could tear anything. It was releasing hot breath from its mouth, and its fangs were eager to chew on something. The Uzumaki shinobi felt a lot more confident on seeing their commander standing on top of the beast. Their objective might just be possible to achieve with this much firepower. They could very well hold the enemy until reinforcements arrived from the village. Minato smiled a little on seeing his mother unleash her full power. He had never forgotten that quite a few people in the village still saw her as an outsider since she was not from the Uzumaki clan. But now that very same outsider was risking her life and that of her son to protect those very same people. He saw quite a few of his comrades lower their heads in shame for doubting her loyalty and will before. "I'll create an opening. We stop them here," instructed Inoue calmly. There was a loud cheer from within the Uzumaki ranks, yet someone else was also doing the same thing as the enemy force gave out a brave roar once again before initiating their charge. Now! On her command, the giant wolf unleashed a torrent of scorching hot flames from its maw as his summoner performed a very different set of hand seals. Wind style, particle dissemination. The enemy force had already scrambled its best water style and earth style users to the front in order to save themselves from the approaching wall of flames, but they all paled when that inferno of flames suddenly split into hundreds of fireballs that were lifted swiftly into the skies. Inoue clasped her hands together and concentrated fully, even as her Sharingan clearly showed her large clusters of enemy forces. Fire style, artillery barrage, said Inoue coldly. Hundreds of deadly fireballs rained down from the dark skies without any mercy, shredding ranks upon ranks of enemy shinobi as they were all engulfed in flames and reduced to ashes. Charge! The Uzumaki strike team quickly charged towards the disarrayed enemy force under the shadow of that monstrous wolf. Few of the enemy units tried to flee but found themselves trapped as a 3-sided red-colored barrier rose up across the battlefield, leaving the Kumogakure force no choice but to face the approaching Uzumaki force. Few of their officers tried to reform their lines, but it was turning extremely difficult within more and more kunai, explosives and shuriken raining from the skies courtesy of the Uzumaki support squads hiding in the nearby trees. Minato had been so sure of their victory that he never imagined an even stronger counterattack. The first one came in the form of a bone-chilling scream that made the entire Uzumaki strike team collapse instantly, with everyone clutching their bleeding ears. "Don't falter," encouraged Inoue. The second attack came in the form of a red blur emerging from the enemy lines. Normal humans couldn't have seen that movement with their bare eyes, but Minato's Sharingan, broken that it was, did show him a faint visage of the enemy. And it made him go pale. His mother's monstrous wolf was hit by a powerful punch and sent sailing away. Then the newcomer turned towards the paralyzed Uzumaki strike team. Minato took a step back when he finally got a first look at the enemy. 9 tails was what his eyes showed him, followed by a human-shaped-like creature covered in vicious red chakra and demonic eyes. He saw 4 jounin regain their bearings and jump towards the enemy, only to be torn to pieces as the beast caught them with its tails and tore them apart. Meanwhile, the enemy army had reformed their lines and were bolstered by the carnage their creature had wrought upon the Uzumaki forces. With a renowned vigor, they charged forward. "Minato, hold off that bastard for a few minutes. I will take care of the others," instructed Inoue, even as she charged alone towards the approaching enemy army. Minato nodded and saw his mother slice through the enemy front lines, wrecking carnage through her pure speed and sword strikes alone. "Hey, ugly!" yelled the young Namikaze, even as he clenched his fist, making groundwater erupt from the soil beneath the creature's feet, which sent it flying away. He then looked at the remaining seniors around him, and for the very first time he saw respect in their eyes for him. "Trap him inside our strongest barrier. Let's split into 15-man teams. Team 1 battles the beast, Team 2 holds the barrier, Team 3 reinforce Commander Namikaze, Team 4 protects the support and barrier teams," instructed Minato quickly. He was pleased to see everyone agreeing to his plan, not that they had much of a choice or time to think of alternatives. Their remaining force split off, with one team following Minato, the other taking up positions all around the beast and performing a set of hand seals. The next one went off to aid Inoue, and the last one took up positions and began to prevent enemy stragglers who broke through Inoue from attacking the support squads. For Violet Flames formation. Just as planned, the barrier team quickly started establishing a purple-colored double-edged barrier all around the beast. It realized the trap, immediately displaying a sense of intelligence as it moved towards the only direction where the barrier was not yet erected in order to escape. It jumped and was met with 16 strong kicks all across its body as Team 1, led by Minato, brutally pushed it back as the barrier came up all around them. The beast went flying away, but soon regained balance and growled at them furiously. The Uzumaki team flinched when their skin burned at the point they had hit the creature with, but having no choice, they ignored the pain. "Let's maintain distance. We cannot risk close-quarter combat," advised one of the jounin from Team 1. "That's not going to be easy. But let's try our best. Maybe we can wear him down if we keep on fighting," suggested another Uzumaki jounin. "Minato, what do you think?" asked another chunin worriedly. Despite his age, Minato knew the older ninja around him had started trusting his abilities and intellect. "It has more chakra than our entire team combined. I don't think we can tire him out, but we do need to maintain our distance, or we're as good as dead." "I have an idea, but I will need all of your help to keep it distracted," suggested Minato, even as he continued looking at the beast with his red eyes. "We won't know unless we try." "We've got your back," promised the eldest jounin, earning nods from the rest of the team. Everyone, switch to long-range ninjutsu. Minato instantly threw a kunai a few feet in the air above the beast, which didn't go unnoticed. It instantly sent 4 of its tails to tear the boy apart as soon as he appeared in mid-air by teleporting to the kunai. He saw the tails coming even as his remaining teammates bombarded the beast with ninjutsu and weapons. Even then, those demonic eyes were focused solely on him. He evaded the tails but flinched when one of them flicked his leg. Ignoring the scorching pain, he threw 4 more kunai all around the beast and continued to perform hand signs. Minato flipped and jumped back towards his team just as he finished the preparations for his jutsu. Sealing style, Blood Oath. The 4 kunai thrown by Minato earlier glowed as the sealing tags on them were activated, which in turn unleashed black chakra chains that wrapped themselves all across the beast even as it screamed in rage and pain. Another chain emerged from the ground beneath Minato and stuck itself in his back. Minato had never experienced such immense physical pain before, as he felt the violent chakra of his opponent fighting with his own life force. "You mastered that jutsu?" asked Akira Uzumaki in shock. "It's your life force against his power." "That's too dangerous," warned another Uzumaki. "Stop him before he threatens the village," whispered Minato, as he collapsed to his knees due to sheer amount of anger, hatred and pain entering his body. He looked at his enemy and for the first time he felt the connection. It was indeed a human corrupted by evil chakra, maybe from one of the tailed beasts. Yet that man's own chakra was just as sinister, which could only mean he was a serious threat to everyone. He could not allow someone like this monster to endanger the village or his little brother. Minato coughed up blood as the beast fought against him, but he maintained his grip over those chains as his comrades moved in to either kill or at the very least be able to restrain him. Inoue flinched as the last of her men was taken out by a group of Kumogaku Jounin and Chunin. It had been more than an hour since the combat began and already most of her force was annihilated. When the strike teams were eliminated, the support and barrier teams jumped into the battle but were overwhelmed one after another. The enemy paid for those victories in blood as more than half of their force remained dead or injured across the battlefield. She looked at the flickering barrier and cursed when one heavily wounded Uzumaki Jounin was the only one maintaining it as the other members of his team had to rush in and were killed eventually. Her heart skipped a bit on seeing her eldest son standing against the monster all alone. Judging from his wounds and diminished chakra, he was at his limit. Fire style, majestic destroyer flame. She felt no remorse on unleashing another monstrous and scorching wave of flames towards the enemy. Quite a few were burned alive while the ones in the rear scrambled to defend themselves, which gave her opening. Minato panted harshly as he fought to keep his tanto upright and flinched when the barrier around him fell as the Jounin keeping it together died from chakra exhaustion and his previous wounds. He looked around to see the mutilated corpses of his comrades that were brutally murdered by this monster. His own chakra was finished, and he was bleeding heavily. The fact that his vision had started to blur was enough to show that he didn't have long to finish this fight. His mother was still fighting the enemy even when all their other comrades were dead. He couldn't leave her alone. Channeling wind chakra through his weapon, he charged towards the humanoid monster, making it roar and do the same at him. Minato ducked the first few tails with the help of his eyes that still showed him their trajectory and slapped an explosive note over another tail before making it explode while jumping away. However, he clutched his chest in pain and collapsed face first into the ground. My chakra is, thought Minato bitterly, as he tried to reach his tanto but it was too far away. The monster grinned as it picked up all the available swords and tanto nearby with the help of its tails and sent it straight towards the dying boy. It couldn't help but roar even more furiously when the said boy stood up on his own two shaky legs and looked at the approaching death without fear and a strange sense of acceptance. Forgive me, father. At the very least I can die on my feet, thought Minato disappointedly. He would never forget the next few moments for the rest of his life as a yellow flash appeared between the hail of weapons mere inches away from impaling him. He heard a painful grunt, and his hands shook in fear on seeing his own mother taking the mortal blows aimed for him. However, the very next second she disappeared from in front of him, and his eyes widened on seeing her teleport above the monster and slice his head off mercilessly. She landed on her feet only to allow the weapons embedded in her body to fall harmlessly to the ground. He rushed towards her, but her wounds had already started to heal with steam emerging from her body. When she turned to look at him, he saw dark black lines in a strange pattern forming around her face. "Ka-san," he whispered, but her gaze was already fixated somewhere else. "I'm fine. This is the Sage Mode, a jutsu that allows one to use the energy present in nature. It's more powerful with many applications. Enhanced healing prowess is what I have developed among other things as its uses," explained Inoue calmly. "What do we do now?" "Everyone is," whispered Minato hesitantly, as he looked at all their comrades that lay dead on the ground. Inoue placed her own right hand across her son's forehead, and he felt his own wounds healing instantly along with his chakra reserves getting recharged. She then knelt before him and placed a kiss on his cheek before engulfing him in a fierce hug. Before he could ask her anything, she whispered something into his ears that made him freeze in shock. Inoue used his shock to lean back, and it was then that his gaze met her Sharingan. "I'm so proud of you, Minato. I wish we could have spent more time together, but remember what I said about Tobarama and look after your little brother. Promise me," Minato requested Inoue sadly, as tears fell from her eyes and the shape of her Sharingan started to change. Minato wanted to scream against the order in his mind holding him back. He had never felt more afraid than he was now as he gave a reluctant nod without his consent. His mother must have seen his pain and anguish, which made more tears fall from her eyes as the Kumogaku force started charging towards them. "It's a parent duty to protect their children. Now go and live my share too," said Inoue seriously, There are too many of them, come with me. Inoue's eyes widened on seeing him able to fight back against her Sharingan's genjutsu. Even at this young age, his will and power were stronger than most adults. But it was exactly why he had to survive this night. There was a reason why our clan was feared across the world. You have started to master our power, but that's just the first stage. Even Tobirama knows about the second stage only. Tonight, I will show these enemies the final stage. It's a forbidden jutsu and one which results in the user's death. I hope you never master this, but if you do, then I wish the day never comes when you have to use it. You and Nagato are the hope of the Namikaze clan and my hope too. No matter what happens from here on out, I will love you always, said Inoue proudly with a smile. Minato was unable to stop the voice in his head as it made him start to run away, but his eyes couldn't tear itself apart from the disappearing form of his mother who was getting surrounded by the enemy forces. He kept on running for gods knew how long as the battle continued to rage behind him for several long minutes. Suddenly the heavens itself cried as a tremendous amount of lightning fell from the skies upon a single point on the ground continuously before a blinding light made everything go blank. Minato was thrown away by the shockwave and felt few of his ribs crack a little, but when he extended his sensory powers, he was horrified to find nothing but his own presence in the entire area. A strangled scream left his lips and tears of blood fell from his eyes. The pain, the helplessness, the fact that he had failed to protect another of his loved ones haunted him. The guilt and disappointment weighed over his heart like a dark cloud, and he felt something within him break, knowing his mother was never coming back. By the time the reinforcements arrived on the scene, all they saw was a devastated battlefield and a lone boy with burning red eyes. The Mizukage looked straight into those eyes and slightly gasped on seeing they had changed. He looked into the child's gaze and received a dark nod in return. He knew the boy was ready. Flashback end. The shouts around him were getting louder and more desperate even as the boy in his arms slowly continued to die. Naruto didn't know how long he had been reminiscing, but it must have been a few minutes at the most since Mangetsu was still alive and clinging to life. Haku was attempting to heal his wounds with her own medical jutsu. The look in her eyes was the same one that Naruto remembered having when his own mother was dying. She and the others died because you were weak. He could never forget those words said to him by the Mizukage when he had yelled at the man for failing to protect his mother and comrades. It had ignited an inferno of hate inside of him which made him acquire more and more power in order to never let such a tragedy happen again. If only he had mastered this power all those years ago, maybe his family and comrades would still be alive today. He had lived a life full of regrets, and it was exactly why he didn't want to add another one to his heart. Haku glared murderously when Naruto grabbed her hands and moved her away. She was about to argue when Mei stopped her, and rightly so, as everyone else felt a strange feeling around there. That feeling only grew more stronger as their commander clasped his hands together and closed his eyes in full concentration. A few tense minutes passed, and just when everyone's nerves were about to explode, they saw it happen. Dark black lines emerged beneath Naruto's eyelids that moved downwards vertically across his face. Nobody could see how far those lines went since the commander's face was covered by his face mask, but they could feel the power gathering inside of him. Naruto, you, whispered Mei in shock. When he opened his eyes once more, they were no longer the sky blue or the red eyes that his comrades had seen before. Instead, it was mixture between yellow and green. He looked in the eyes of his comrades and hoped they would believe in him once more. I will not let him die, he promised with determination burning in his eyes. He didn't wait for their response, and instead started to perform the hand seals taught to him by his instructor long ago. He had been explicitly told never to use this jutsu unless he had this power flowing into him, or else he would die. He had tried so hard to master this power in his early childhood and teenage years only to meet failure after failure. He had become frustrated and given up only to regret his decision forever after the battle of the S Company with the Kinkaku force in an effort to rescue Hashirama. That regret forced him to renew his efforts, and after 7 years of hard work, he had finally gained a hold of this power. Maybe some good could finally come out of it. He made the tiger hand seal as both of his hands started to glow with green-colored chakra. That's impossible, whispered Kisame in disbelief. The same feeling was present in the eyes of the others even as Naruto placed his hands glowing with this new chakra over Mangetsu's lethal wound. Sage art, mitotic regeneration.